a huge part of it.
Right. I think everyone would agree that was the main part of it. We didn't beat them in Vietnam or North Korea.
The main part of it, but it was tied to a military buildup. So I think it was two things. It was one, the clarity. So Reagan came in and he described the Soviet Union as an evil empire.
Right.
Pause?
And all of the intelligentsia in D.C., all the Democrats, all the media, they're like, what a horrible thing to say. You can't say that. Reagan went to the United Kingdom and he said, Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. People were horrified. They asked him, all right, what's your strategy in the Cold War? He said, very simple. We win, they lose. And that was all viewed as
funny enough, that's something they said at Welcome Pack at the Ezra Klein DashCon.
Sort of a Philistine.
They asked, like, how do we win against Republicans? Well, winning, it's actually similar also to what Bibi said when he was trying to get the United States excited about wars of aggression against the so-called axis of evil in the war on terror, right? He was like, yeah, you win in Afghanistan, it's very, very hard. You win in Afghanistan, but then you go into Iraq, and Iraq is easier because you already won in Afghanistan. And then after you've won in Afghanistan and Iraq, then just like Iran, that's even easier. It's clearly, his agenda, like take out my enemies for me. And, don't worry, like how do you win? By winning, right? It's just such a fucking brain dead thing to say.
And simplicity. And I think it was exactly right. And laying that out, speaking. Do you know the backstory behind the Berlin Wall speech?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
You probably know Peter Robinson, who was the speechwriter.
Yes.
So 3 times the State Department deleted those words from that speech. And 3 times Reagan wrote it back. And the State Department argued, they said, Mr. President, you can't say this. This is too bellicose. This is too provocative. And my favorite, they said, this is too unrealistic. The Berlin Wall will stand till the end of time. And Reagan said, look, this is the whole point of the speech. And less than 3 years after Reagan gave that speech, the Berlin Wall was torn to the ground. And it wasn't knocked down by American Army tanks. We didn't shoot missiles at it. It was shining truth and light that tore it down. It was also rebuilding the American military. It was what was then pejoratively called Star Wars, where the Soviet Union, their economy couldn't match our military buildup, and it bankrupted them. That's an example of peace through strength.
I wonder, is there anybody who was why after that victory, America didn't thrive in the way that we thought that it would, that I thought that it would? My family was involved in that. We were very focused on it in my house. We won. And I wonder 2 things. Why didn't the United States kind of declare victory and make some sort of arrangement with Russia that allowed like mutual prosperity rather than continuing a Cold War? And second, I wonder why the United States didn't get a lot better. Like, why don't we have better infrastructure? Why don't we have fewer homeless? Why do we have all these drugs? Like, if we won, why does our country look like this? Station this morning, as you do, I'm sure, every day. And all these people lying in the street and sleeping outside. It's like,
I got this.
We're sorry to say it, but this is not a very safe country.
Okay, yeah, we did pause it. Okay, sorry, technical difficulties. I can answer that. Why is things not better? We had a Cold War. Let me try to figure this out. All right, let's go back. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go back. Let's start off in World War II. All right. So you got a Great Depression. You've got a president named Herbert Hoover, who is like, you know what the solution for the Great Depression is? Lower taxes and cut services. And he's like killing people with these policies. People get sick of this shit. They get sick of seeing towns. There was towns of homeless people. They were called Hoovervilles. And we get the great Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? And, America then goes to war with Germany, allies with the Soviet Union, bashes the Nazis over the fucking head, ends them, and then FDR dies, and we get Truman. Now, Truman, look, FDR is a little bit of a class traitor. He was willing to do some stuff like the New Deal, which is not in the interest of the business class, of the capital class, but is very much in the interest of the American people. He doesn't do this because he hates capitalism and he wants to end capitalism. He does this to save capitalism because he's got socialists and communists nipping at his heels, right? It's one of them does so well in an election, he has to name the guy vice president, right? And then the business interest in the United States do a plot to try to coup Roosevelt before World War II even starts. But anyway, we go through World War II. That's over. FDR's dead. Truman is replacing him, and Truman is a capitalist, right? So we start a Cold War with the Soviet Union. And during that Cold War, I want you to notice, all right, in addition to the New Deal, which, you know, creates Social Security, creates, you know, a lot of the services that sort of make capitalism work, that are, you know, like social democratic policies, right, that sort of sand the rough edges off of capitalism so it's not hurting people as bad. We enact Keynesian economic policy, high taxes on the rich. Some would say confiscatory. That means like not we're going to take all your money if you're rich, but you know, if you are making, you know, over a certain amount of money, you know, past like an absurd level, the tax rate's going to go to like 90%, right? So we're putting a hard control in like how rich you can get or how fast you can get rich. Doesn't mean that they're not getting richer. They are. But you know, there's stuff in place to slow that down, right? And there are social services for people, and you know, in general, like the American worker, when the amount the American worker is producing for their boss goes up, so does their pay rate, right? You got unions, you got you know, things were kind of going right, and that's happening during the Cold War, all right. You've got the United States improving its civil rights, passing civil rights legislation, passing voter rights legislation. What we in total refer to as progress is what's going on. We've got progress going on during that time, right? The United States is in a competition, is in a PR war with the Soviet Union. And a great place for the Soviet Union to criticize the United States is how are black people treated in the United States? Not great. Okay, we take away that criticism by passing civil rights, by passing the Voter Rights Act, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The United States, in Tucker's mind, from what he's saying, was decent, you know, under the during the Cold War. Then we won the Cold War. And you'd think, well, it's going to get even better now, right? You know, we can take that peace dividend, we can turn those swords into plowshares, and we can all live really well. And that's not what happens. The opposite happens, right? People used to get paid more when their bosses did better, when their companies made more money. Now you get paid the same. You're doing your job and the guy that they laid off's job, and you're getting paid the same rate. And like that can work for a while, but at some point, right, as stuff starts to cost more and more and more, as you know, real estate and housing becomes an investment, becomes a commodity, and the prices of the rent goes up and up and up and up. This much money just isn't cutting it anymore. So yeah, shit gets miserable. You know why it gets miserable? Let me use some capitalist concepts for you. You know about competition, right? If I make Cheerios and there's no competition for me, it's Irene's Cheerios or no Cheerios, right? So everybody that wants Cheerios comes to me. I charge $10 for a box of Cheerios, right? It's a small box of Cheerios. The Cheerios are hard and they break your teeth. They're not very good. They're not very healthy for you. I put a lot of sugar in the Cheerios, right? You got no choice. You're going to buy my Cheerios, all right? But if we got competition and you can have Cheerios and you can have Cheerios and you can have Cheerios, then somebody's going to come up with a good box of Cheerios for a low price, and people are going to buy that instead. And I'm going to say, uh-oh, I better not be so stingy with my Cheerios boxes. Here's more Cheerios for you. I better make the Cheerios taste better. Here's a new recipe for you. I better lower the cost. $10 is too much for a box of Cheerios. Here you go, $3.50 for a box of Cheerios, all right? That's competition, right? And you capitalists apply the fuck out of that like you think the market is magic and it'll save everything, right? But you don't apply it to systems of distribution. You don't apply it to modes of production. And you don't recognize that while the United States capitalism had a competition with Soviet communism for which is the best mode of production, we were getting treated better because there was competition, because there was pressure. And when that pressure gets lifted, right, when that competition dies out, then the United States is serving up shit sandwiches to you, and you are eating them because you have no choice. There is no alternative. Those are the words of Margaret Thatcher, the British Ronald Reagan, right? Why capitalism? Because there's no alternative. There just isn't. There's nothing else you can do. There's no choice. You're gonna eat this shit sandwich, and you're gonna like it. No wonder we're eating shit sandwiches. That's right, Jimmy B. That was Smedley Butler that stopped the business plot against FDR. Anyway, sorry, Chad. I had to pop in there to shed some light on this dark conversation between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. But yeah, do you wonder why things didn't get better after we won the Cold War? Because there's no fucking competition. Because the business class can treat you however the fuck you want. And let's be real, chat. This guy is rich as fuck. He is the heir to the fortune. You ever had Swanson's frozen dinners, right? That's a big company. They sell a lot of frozen dinners, like, right? You know, they're like, right? That's a huge company, and he's the heir to that fortune. I think he married into actually the Swanson family, right? So I mean that's what we're dealing with Tucker Carlson. He's not feeling the pain. He's been a rich Fox News broadcaster for this whole time, and now he is a wealthy, you know, content creator. I guess is that what you want to call him, right? So he's not actually feeling the pain. He's faking it. He's trying to relate to you. He's like, hello, fellow kids, right? And we can tell by the fact that you're holding the skateboard, sir, by the trucks, that you are not a fellow kid, right? And we can tell by everything, by your fucking house, that you are not one of the common people, even though you want to fake it.
Country. Walk through Oakland or Philadelphia. Yeah, good luck. So most people, when they think about this, want to carry a firearm. And
oh my God.
The problem is there can be massive consequences for that. Ask Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse got off in the end, but he was innocent from the first moment. It was
much further down the road of liberalism. You look at Bill Clinton.
I'm tempted to watch the commercials, but no.
Who inherited the peace dividend of the Cold War being over and moved us more to the left, and then Obama
He didn't, though. Bill Clinton didn't. Bill Clinton did welfare reform. The only thing that he slightly moved us to the left on, I think, is maybe taxes, right? And that is important, and that is something that has not happened since, right? You wonder about the U.S. trade deficit and where that came from. It came from Reagan. You're standing right in front of Ronald Reagan there. Right, that's who invented did I say trade deficit? I meant the national deficit, the national debt, right? That was an effect of spending crazy amounts of money on the military to go after the Soviet Union, right? That's where it fucking came from. That and cutting taxes saying we're doing this to help the economy. Chat, this experiment has been tried ad nauseum. Cutting taxes has never helped the economy. Trickle-down economics has never worked. Every time the rich people get to keep more of their money, they do not, in fact, create more jobs with it. They buy more yachts with it. They buy more stock with it, right? They use it for leverage. They don't use it to help out the society. There is no social contract under capitalism. The social contract is fuck you. Get back to work.
Accelerated it a lot. So there are lots of
I agree.
bad economic policies, but I also think they're cultural things. The loss of faith,
I agree with
the loss
all
of
of
family.
That. I know what you're going to say, and I agree 100%. I bet there's not one word that I would disagree with. All I'm saying is, like, I think it's important to step back and ask.
But I actually think Russia has very little to do with it. So,
well, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, which is, like, we're all sort of focused on beating our adversaries abroad, but what is victory worth if our own country becomes what it is now? And maybe we're spending a little too much time focused abroad and not enough time focused on the people sleeping outside Union Station.
Okay, now that's a great sentiment. I wish that Tucker meant that. I wish that Tucker Carlson was on board for housing first, right? Housing first is a policy where you stop worrying about, like, is the person addicted to drugs? Can we drug test them? Can we make sure that can we control the fuck out of their life and then give them housing. You just give people housing, because you got to recognize, even if somebody's life is a wreck, even if they're addicted to fucking drugs, right? Even if they've got mental health issues, all of those issues are going to be better if they are housed than if they are out on the street, right? A lot of countries have tried this. Finland has been very successful with it. I wish that's what Tucker was saying, right? That, like, let's stop spending on military and let's start spending putting homeless people in homes. That's not what he means, though. That's not what he believes in. That's not what he's saying, all right? America first, simply put, means we are going to attack Americans first. We are going to take our military, and we've seen this, chat, over the last few weeks. We're going to take our military and we're going to station it in cities to make sure that our Gestapo can deport people without due process, all right? That's America first. We're going to attack Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, New York City, Boston, and on down the line. We're going to attack every blue city, right? We're going to take away their self-determination. We're going to overrule their elected officials, and we're going to undermine their control. That's what America first means. Right? It means rather than going and attacking Iraq and attacking Afghanistan, we're going to attack America first. That's what Trump was talking about when he said the enemy within. It's really fucking clear right now, chat. The enemy within is us. The only reason, the only inclination towards isolationism in the MAGA coalition is isolationism, so they can clamp down their iron grip on a dictatorship. That's what America first means, simply put, just in case there's any confusion out there. I see people in shorts chat are like, where are the chuds? Where are the chuds? Don't worry, the chuds will be there, all right? I said they gotta be subbed to it for a certain amount of time, but some of them will sub, and they will wait for that long just so they can say, two genders or something inane like that, right? That's...
So, look, I absolutely think we need to focus at home emphatically, and we need to focus on prosperity. We need to focus on reducing the debt, reducing spending, empowering people, low taxes, small businesses. American free enterprise. It's the most powerful force for fighting poverty the world has ever seen. I'm 1,000% there. I also recognize
it's the most powerful force for creating poverty, for creating an underclass that feels like they have to go to work and do that shitty job and get no benefits and constantly get more work as they're laying people off and giving you their job. That's what American capitalism is. It's not a fucking engine. Like, if you've lived in America, you understand this, right? Your boss's profits, your company's profits are going up, right? Is your pay going up? No. Is your cost of rent going down? No. Are eggs cheaper? No. Is anything better? That's what Trump promised. And he hasn't fucking delivered because he didn't give a good goddamn. It was a campaign slogan for him, right? That's all it fucking was. He's got no interest in that, chat. He will let you fucking starve to death in the streets. He will let you die in the streets. Hell, he'll probably throw you in a fucking camp if you're homeless, right? And there's going to be more homeless people under these fucking policies. The tariffs make things more expensive, not less expensive. The taxes that he's doing, he's cutting taxes on the wealthy, raising effectively the tax rate on the poor, and making America more unlivable. Like, I think we can call these assholes on their bluff at this point. I think it's bloody clear that they were not serious about helping the American people. And sadly, chat, it feels like no party is, right? Kamala Harris for a hot second was talking about price gouging. Your prices were gouged during COVID, right? There was some inflation going on during COVID that made some prices higher. But then after COVID was over, when inflation came down, these companies realized, hey, we don't have to lower the prices back down. These people will pay those prices. We're going to charge them those prices. They were gouging you. They were taking advantage of a fucked up situation where you're already fucked over. And you don't know the difference between, like, are the prices high because of Biden or the prices high because of capitalism, right? And they just jack up the fucking prices on you. Right. And yeah, like for a hot second, chat, Kamala was thinking about, okay, you know, my thing's going to be fighting price gouging. Her people talked to her and they said, Kamala, sweetie, this is not how we do things in the good old US of A. All right. You fighting price gouging, that you call it price gouging, I call it profits, and I want to keep my profits, so you shut the fuck up. And that's what Kamala did. Like a good little puppet. That's what Kamala did. All right? And that's why she lost.
It is a dangerous world. And part of the responsibility of leaders, part of President Trump's responsibility, is to keep America safe. Let's go back to where we started.
But can I ask,
Iran.
you've been in the district a long time in D.C., so have I. And the city's way more dangerous, and Congress runs this city.
No, it's a complete crap hole.
So I'm saying, like, no Iranian's ever going to kill me, but I could get carjacked here.
Well,
and I
don't know about Washington, D.C., but nationwide, I mean, I guess we got to look at some crime statistics if you want to. Nationwide, if you look at crime statistics, what you'll find is that crime is almost universally on a decline. Crime is going down, right? If you want to say, well, Irene, that's not realistic. You're talking about a nationwide average, right? They're talking about in the big cities. Okay. In the big cities, chat, the crime rate is actually lower than in some of the small cities, in some of the red cities, right? The highest crime rates in the nation are in small towns in red states. All right? But overall, the crime is at historic lows, right? There was a time right after the lockdown where crime went up. There was a spike in crime. That spike, came right back down, and we're right back to where we were at like near record lows. But these assholes need you to be afraid. They want you to see homeless people and think crime. They want you to see immigrants and think crime, even though when we look at the crime statistics, right, undocumented people are about the least likely people out there to actually commit a crime, right? They commit crimes at a lower rate than citizens do. And it makes sense, right? If you're in the country and your paperwork is not in order, you don't want to give ICE a chance, or you don't want to be touching the criminal justice system, because there's a chance then that you will get deported, right? It makes sense why people that are undocumented actually don't commit crimes. What they do, chat, is they work very hard and oftentimes send money home. Trump is, in the big beautiful bill, trying to tax that money is called remittance, right, chat? When somebody comes from a different country, people in their country are struggling, they come to America, they work a very difficult job in, say, a slaughterhouse or in agriculture, and they whatever money they can save, they send home to help people in their country, oftentimes a country that the United States helped destabilize, right? And Trump even wants to tax that shit. It's hard all around. It's hard on all of us. And we got to start seeing our way to some solidarity, that your enemy is not the migrant worker. Your enemy is not the homeless person. Your enemy is not the trans person, right? Trans people are not making your egg prices higher. Capitalists are. And we need politicians who will actually stand up against those capitalists. And unfortunately, you're not seeing them on the right, and you're not seeing them on the left. You're seeing a lot of fakers, right? Tucker Carlson just acted like he wanted to, cut the...
But now there are freaking...
He just gestured as if he wanted to cut the military budget and do something about homelessness. But chat, I swear to God, the only thing that Tucker Carlson will do about homelessness is put the fucking homeless in camps, or try to deport them, or treat them like... absolute garbage, eugenics, right? That's his fucking policy solution for homelessness. He's not going to do stuff for homeless people.
I don't understand how the Congress could run this city and focus on the dangers of Iran when the city is like garbage. Okay. It's garbage.
But Congress doesn't run the city. We could.
Congress does run the city. It's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution, but they've given home rule, so it's a Democrat mayor.
Take it back. You control the Congress.
I'd vote for it. But it is.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you hear what they're saying? They're talking about Washington, D.C., right? Is D.C. a majority city? I know at various times it's been called Chocolate City because of, there's a large black population in DC. In general, this whole move of strip away self-determination from the people of Washington, DC is just anti-blackness. That is what has motivated, this idea that they're talking about right now of the Congress taking control of Washington, D.C. Everywhere else in the country, you get to elect a mayor, you get to elect a city council, the people of the city get to run their own city. But no, these jackasses are, they don't like the idea of black people running a city where they live.
It's a question of math.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, why? How can people ignore? It's like if my own kids are drug addicts, but I'm focused on my neighbor's kids, it's like I'm neglecting my own kids. And there's a sense in which the Congress is neglecting the country that elected them in favor of this relentless focus on other people's problems. That's the way it feels as an American.
Look, there are lots of problems in America that we need to fix. Why is...
Again, just understand what Trucker is selling you as a grift. Like, I would love to tell you that there are principled people on the right that are taking a stand against military intervention, and it's just not true. Tucker's been all over the map, right? He when you see him on a show on Fox News, when he was on, he would glaze up Donald Trump, right? Meanwhile, behind the scenes, he couldn't wait to get rid of Donald Trump, right? Nothing that Tucker says should be taken seriously. Like, right, I swear to God, this guy is a mega fucking grifter. He's on all sides of the issue. That being said, what you're going to hear him say about Iran and Israel at times does sound, pretty base. That's the lane that he's occupied at this point. MAGA has kind of turned its back on people that are anti-war, on its anti-war message, that it's, the neocons, the George W. Bushes of the world that started the war on terror, that spent billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars on wars that the United States did not win Afghanistan, did not win Iraq, right? Those are huge failures, actually left those countries more destabilized than when we went in. The trick of Trump is to try to say, hey, I'm not with these stupid neocons, right? I am different. I am the president of peace. Don't fucking believe him. Look at what's happening. Look at what he allowed to go on in Gaza. Look at how he allowed Israel to slip out of the ceasefire, get some hostages back, and then go to war with the people, with the civilians of Gaza once again. And look at what he's allowed. And chat, I want you to understand, when Israel does something, it's because the United States allowed it, all right? This is not a tail wagging the dog situation. The United States controls Israel. Israel acts at the behest of the United States, not the other way around. A lot of that shit is just anti-Semitic brainworms, right? That starts with the conflation of Israel with the Jewish people, which it's not. And it doesn't represent a lot of Jewish people. A lot of the leadership of organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace, for instance, are Jewish and oppose Israel's action, but they want to conflate the two things, and then they want to present this idea of Israel secretly controlling the United States with their puppet strings through AIPAC or whatever, and let the United States off the hook for the evil that it does, for the evil that the global hegemon around the world has been doing since probably the end of World War II, right? All of our interventionist bullshit, all of our puppet states that we set up in South Korea, in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, right? These are governments that nobody wants imposed upon them. And it's, and like I said in the very beginning, right, supporting the government that is in the United States' interests both harms that faction, harms that government, slimes them with the stink of a collaborator, and it helps the party in power that the U.S. does not want in power, for them to be able to say, we are fighting the American invaders, right? This is bass-ackwards foreign policy, and it's not helping the United States, and it's not helping the world, and it needs to stop. And yeah, it's a huge waste of money too. Huge waste of money.
Is DC a pit? because you have a mayor and a Democrat city council that won't let police officers arrest bad guys. And in every city you see across the country, whether it's New York, whether it's Chicago, whether it's LA, whether it's
again,
San Francisco.
this is a narrative. This is the narrative that they've set up. They want you to think that Joe Biden is like, I don't know, like, you know, criminals are getting arrested for horrible, violent crimes, and they come into the court and the judge is about to throw the book at them, but then Biden comes in and he's like, oh, are you an immigrant? Here's a hotel. Here's a key to the Ritz-Carlton. Here, go stay in this fancy hotel room. It's got a spa. It's got a sauna. It's really nice. You're going to love it, right? That's what they want you to think. They want you to buy that shit. You're angry, right? Because so you want to blame somebody. And so it's tempting to be like, yeah, Biden's fucking us over and helping out those immigrants, right? And it's just a narrative. It's just a story. It's something they're making up. They're not showing you proof of it. And in fact, the reason they're not showing you proof of it is because it's a fucking lie. It's an absolute lie. Crime's not at an all-time high. Crime's at an all-time low compared to what your, you know, parents, grandparents, whatever dealt with in the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, right? Like that New York City had some real crime at that point. If you watch any of the movies from that time period, you know, you'll get a little glimpse into what that's like, right? But that's not what's going on now. But this guy wants to make you afraid. He wants you to make you afraid of immigrants. He wants you to make you afraid of homeless people. And you know, it's this tough on crime shit that's been the grift ever since Nixon, right? My enemies will not be tough on crime, but I will be tough on crime. And it doesn't do shit. Broken windows policing is what it's called when you enforce the law in a maximalist way on the most minimal violations. That's why it's called broken windows, right? The idea being that if you stop people from doing small crimes with heavy penalties, with an expansion of the carceral state, an expansion of prisons, right? And in this case, making prison into a business. And business is booming in the United States. Business is booming in El Salvador, right? Those people are making money off of the over-incarceration of the American people.
Francisco, if you have Democrats, we see the LA riots where they won't let people be arrested. All right.
Then why not work in regime change here? Why not use the bully pulpit?
I do. What do you think I do every day? And
I never see a Republican senator stand up and say, I just walked to work this morning over people dying of drug ODs. We're going to shut this place down unless they fix it. They're mad about Putin. Like, what did Putin do to Washington? Nothing.
Look, in terms of regime change, let's talk this week. The riots in L.A., I've made very clear that the cause of those riots are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. And when you elect communists who hate America, who stop law enforcement from arresting criminals, you get what you get on the street.
Amen. I agree.
My in-laws are
Again, make him show you the receipts. He has none.
Californians, and they're wonderful people.
Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom are two politicians that I detest. I don't like. In fact, I don't like a lot of the Democrats that get elected in the big cities. You'd think that the liberal bastions, the blue states, the blue cities would be where you'd have some of the most progressive politicians, but you don't, because the influence of money is insane there. And what you generally have is Republicans calling themselves Democrats and governing as Republicans, right? And that's true with Gavin Newsom, right? You know, his solution to homelessness is to sweep encampments off the streets. Democrat Gavin Newsom, right? Who Trump and Ted Cruz will tell you is too soft, is making it too easy to be homeless. Oh, it's a absolute vacation to be homeless in California, right? He'll tell you the exact opposite of what Gavin Newsom is really doing and what the problem with politicians like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are. But yeah, these people are attacking them not because they have the correct analysis and criticism for Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, but because they want to take away the self-determination of states like California and of cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. They want to go in there with troops and run shit, right? And they want to have those troops in place during the elections. And we can just speculate about why that might be. Why wouldn't Donald Trump want the elections to go off free and fair? Could it be because of his record high disapproval rating? could it be? And Chad, I'm not letting the Democrats off the hook either. They have an incredibly high disapproval rating as well. And it's mainly because they are too much like the Republicans. They refuse to fight. They have gone along. They have rolled over and played dead for Donald Trump out of some misguided strategy from Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, and the like. But people want a fighter. People want a Zoran Mamdani. People want a Bernie Sanders. People want an Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, right? People want somebody that's even a JB Pritzker, for fuck's sake. Chat looks good, you know, and I'm talking about a literal billionaire there, right? But you know, compared to the centrist Dems, compared to the loser liberals that you know that have just surrendered to Trump on so much, right? People want Democrats who will stand up. People want Democrats who will fight. People want Democrats who are in touch with the working class and care about the working class, and will allow unions a chance to build power, and will allow people a chance for a better life. That's what people are looking for. I don't know if they're going to find it from the Democratic Party. And it's a sad thing to say, chat, because creating a new party out of whole cloth is no easy task. I don't have any easy answers, but I am going to be 100% honest about the problems in both parties. Obviously, I think the problem with the Republican Party with MAGA is far more grave. I think there is absolutely a value in in voting for a Democrat, if nothing else than to deny a Republican a elected office, right? But the Democratic Party isn't looking great either. Anyway, let's go on.
People that Heidi grew up on the Central Coast of California, and I remember I was texting with my mother-in-law, and I think I sent her a video of criminals going to a store and just looting in California. And her response, she said something like, well, this is really terrible. I wish we could, it's a shame we can't do anything about this. I said, yes, you can. Go in and arrest them. Throw their butts in jail, put them in handcuffs, 100%. And it stops.
Exactly.
And so we know how to fix these things.
I love this shit. I love this shit. I love this shit.
I think DC voted, if I remember right, 92%.
See, the Republicans, our answer is to, when you see a criminal doing crime, you lock them up and you punish them. And the Democrats, they just want to let the criminal out and encourage them to do more. It's so stupid.
Anybody that believes this deserves this kind of shithead politician, this kind of slimy, greasy ball of lies like Ted. Look at this motherfucker. Look at this guy. Look at this piece of work. Who fucking votes for this shithead? You can tell, right? That's the thing, right? With politicians like Ted Cruz, and look, if you want me to name a Democrat analog, Gavin Newsom, all right? I feel like guys like this, when I see them, I automatically don't trust them. I don't understand why Ted Cruz's voters do trust him. I don't understand why Gavin Newsom's voters trust him, right? Just the look on his fucking face, you should see that this guy is an absolute scumbag. And yet people are like, oh no, Ted Cruz is we're so proud of our Texas representative, Ted Cruz. This guy went to Acapulco, chat, while his constituents froze in Texas when their power grid went out because of Texas's stupid laws, right? He went on vacation in Mexico and stayed warm as fuck while his constituents literally, in some cases, froze to death.
Democrat. Democrat policies don't work, and they destroy every community that they are in charge of.
Then why don't Republicans assert their constitutional authority over the city? Don't they control the Congress?
Yes, I'd be all for it.
Who's against?
Yeah, that's right, Yamina. He did lie about the eating the cats, eating the dogs thing.
So, for example, let's take an issue you and I care a lot about.
It's another narrative.
Lockdowns. I had a couple of years ago in the middle of them. D.C. was proposing, the D.C. school district was proposing throwing out of school any child that was not vaccinated. And at the time...
So, Chad, I'm a little bored with him talking about COVID and shit. I know that this gets spicy at some point. I think it's around the discussion of Israel. Let me just advance this a little bit. I hope I'm not pissing anybody off by you're not getting to hear what Ted Cruz has to say about the efficacy of horse paste or the theories about Anthony Fauci or whatever kind of bullshit he's going to throw up about COVID. Yeah, a actual pandemic that took out about 1 million Americans are dead right now because of COVID. The estimation is that if we had had competent leadership and not Donald Trump in the office at the time, that maybe 600,000 of those Americans would be alive today, right? So, I mean, like, yeah, COVID is a huge unforced error. I don't like how Trump oversaw it, and I don't like how Biden oversaw it either. Biden told us that we were over, that the pandemic was over, before it really was, while shit was still bad. And he did that. He did that because your boss wanted him to send your ass back to work, even though it wasn't safe. Even though they hadn't done the bare minimum. Chat, look, let's be realistic, all right? We need to work. We need to get things done. We need to make things. We need to do things. We need to build things in this country. And there's going to be pandemics. In fact, there's probably going to be more pandemics, not less pandemics, going forward. Right? So what should we do about that? Well, I don't know if you know this, chat, but reducing COVID transmission in a workplace can be as simple as adequate ventilation. If your boss installed better ventilators, you'd be less likely to contract COVID at work. That shit should have been done before anybody went back to work. Biden never made them do it, and he sent your ass back to work, right? Before the pandemic was over, and now it's endemic. Now it's going to be with us forever, right? And, it's going to take shit from you that you don't even recognize. It does damage to your organ systems that does not heal, right? Especially, I'm thinking, to the brain. And that much has become apparent. You can see with the people that cared the least about COVID prevention, about personal protective gear, the people that were most resistant to the mask are the ones with the most fucked up brains right now. Their brains are absolutely addled by the effects of COVID, and they are making stupider decisions than they ever have before. They are believing more obvious lies than they ever have before, and they are trusting absolute charlatans like Ted Cruz much easier than they would have before.
To our country. The dollars spent, the aid packages to Ukraine to pay the retirement of civil servants in a country that we have nothing to do with, the endless support for Israel, very expensive. When people are literally buying groceries on credit in the United States, can you feel like it's nothing against Ukraine or Israel or any other country?
All right, let's stop. You said the support for Israel.
No. Stop. Let me stop you, Ted. Let me tell you about what groceries are like in Russia, okay? You go into Russia, you fill up your grocery basket with a bunch of artisanal breads and stuff. It's great, and you don't even pay that much. Like I don't know. I converted all my money to rubles, but it didn't feel like I had to spend that many rubles to get a basket full of bread. And, if only the goddamn socialist Democrats weren't in power in America, we could have that too, right? If we just had leaders like Vladimir Putin.
Israel, very expensive. How much support do we give to Israel?
Well, you tell me. You vote for it.
Yeah, it's about $3 billion a year is the military assistance.
Is that the only assistance?
Yeah, we just have military assistance. Israel does not have additional assistance. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and it's $3 billion a year.
So what is it costing to support the bombing campaign to protect Israel right now from Iran?
So I don't know right now, but I'll tell you this.
Probably like $3 billion per day.
Let's go back to the touchstone on foreign policy. American interest. Our support, our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security interest.
What does it cost?
It benefits us enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No, that's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration.
I want to lock in on something that Ted Cruz just said. Sorry, Chad.
Cost of defending Israel. Do you know?
Fits us enormously.
Well, before we can
interest. Our support, our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security interest.
What does it cost?
It benefits us enormously.
Well, before
you hear what he says? He's talking about the money that the United States supports Israel with, right? And saying that is money well spent. Now, Chad, I wish I could tell you that this was Republican brain rot.
I think it's about time.
However,
we stop those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this
This is Joe Biden from 1986, okay?
body for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment.
Holy shit, it's money well spent. This is Joe Biden in 1986, right? Saying the same thing that we just heard Ted Cruz say. There is a uniparty when it comes to, foreign policy, right? There is certainly a Washington consensus. There is a neoliberal, neoconservative consensus, right? That both of these assholes share.
Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
Do you understand why I say that it's total bullshit to act like Israel is the tail that's wagging the dog of the United States, that Netanyahu's got a secret spy network, he's got compromise on everyone, and he's making he's tricked the United, he's bamboozled the United States into doing, exactly what he wants. No, the Israel and the United States are a unit, all right? Some people have described Israel as the 51st state, and I think that's a pretty fair analysis. Their interests are in line, right? Israel has Iran as its enemy because it's one of the only countries, that's not kind of gotten folded over, right? Despite, Israel is just like a settler colonial invasion of Palestine that came in and just keeps on expanding and expanding like a goddamn cancer, right? In the Middle East. So you'd think that, countries there would be a little bit wary of it, right? And they were at first. They were very wary of it, But, over time, they've just gotten, more people on the side of the U.S., on the side of Israel. And, Iran's one of the only holdouts. They're not great, obviously, right? They're a theocracy. Unfortunately, chat, they're a theocracy that the United States created by putting in, what were we talking about earlier? A puppet government. That's right. That's right. Iran was a secular, very progressive, actually, society before the United States decided that we knew better than Iranian voters and that we put in place the Shah, right? The Shah ruled for a number of years until he was overthrown in the 70s. And, that's been the story of the United States beef with Iran. So Iran is an old enemy of the United States. Iran is also a lifeline for China, right? Who the United States is currently trying to isolate, right? Israel has interests in getting rid of Iran, or at least doing regime change there. The United States has interest. They're just the same. It's not worthwhile to try to speculate. The United States would be good except for Netanyahu's put the magic on us, and anyway. And you're seeing this. This is 1986, right?
The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. I am with my colleagues who are on the floor in the Foreign Relations Committee, and we worry at length about NATO. And we worry about the eastern flank of NATO, Greece and Turkey, and how important it is. They pale by comparison.
Israel serves as an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Middle East for the United States to launch its objectives off of, right? And like Joe Biden said, he's not just coming. It's not just Joe Biden. This is the military-industrial complex consensus that if Israel did not exist, the United States would need to invent them. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out, right? Because what Ted Cruz said, very similar to what Joe Biden said in 1986, right? And this is the kind of shit we need to stop. We need to not stand for this, all right? Whatever your party you're voting for, don't let people like this control your party, okay?
Before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No. That's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration, under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief has control of the armed forces. And so President Trump has made some decisions that we'll know the cost over time, but I don't know the last week. I don't have visibility on that. The annual cost is $3 billion. It's a 10-year memorandum of understanding, and that's the principal driver of the cost. But let me make a point. We get massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares the Mossad is one of the best intelligence sources on the planet. The enemies of Israel, the people who hate Israel, they all hate us. It's almost a perfect overlap. And so if we tried to recreate, if we're just trying to defend America, we tried to recreate the national security benefits of our alliance with Israel, it would cost, I don't know, 30 billion, 300 billion.
So can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
I mean, that's pretty. The thing is, he's right. The thing is he's right. All right. It is ridiculous, though. It is absolutely ridiculous, and it's not the way that things should be. But in practice, unfortunately, that is how things work. The fact that Ted Cruz is fine with it, though, is just fucking ridiculous. Let's see. Let me show you. I got a particularly ignorant comment. Let's see if I can find it again. Oh my god, so many comments, chat. I'm glad at least one of my chats is alive and awake. Why are we in this timeline where Tucker Carlson is making sense? Look, if you pay it close attention, you're not making sense. It's the semblance of sense, right? It's because of who he's standing next to, Ted Cruz, right? It's hard not to sound kind of based when you're disagreeing with Ted Cruz, right? I want to remind people kind of who Tucker Carlson is, if I can find this chat to play off of. Oh my god. Wow. Oh my god. Oh my god. Tucker. Okay, this is the particularly ignorant comment. All right. Tucker has been making sense. Y'all are just finally catching up. Let me tell you a little about Tucker, Dolly, since you don't know shit. All right. You're playing team sports. He's scoring points for your team.
It was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
Team fake populist, I guess, right? Let me tell you a little bit about who this fucking snake actually is, all right? And I call him a snake because he talks out of both sides of his mouth. He says one thing on air, he says something completely different in the privacy of his text messages. But thanks to the Dominion lawsuit, chat, we got a hold of some of those text messages, right? So if you watch Tucker on Fox, you would have to say that he is pretty fucking pro-Trump, right? Him standing up on this Iran thing to what the Trump administration seems to be going for is kind of a new development. And, if anybody's, changed their opinions, it's Tucker, right? But we had what Tucker was saying about Trump on Fox News, which was unabashedly positive. Now look at what Tucker was saying behind the scenes.
Carlson texted that was so worrisome to Fox executives and the board that it reportedly contributed to his firing. The New York Times reported on the message, which was sent on January 7, 2021, obviously a pivotal day right after the insurrection, just hours after those riots at the Capitol. And he was talking about a video he saw of Trump supporters beating up, in his words, an Antifa kid. It was redacted in the Dominion lawsuit court filings, but here's what part of the Times says is behind that big black box at the bottom, right, of those filings. A quote from Tucker's text, it read, quote, "It was 3 against 1, at least. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously. It's not how white men fight. Yet suddenly I found myself rooting against the man, hoping they'd hit him harder, kill him. I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. Then somewhere deep in my brain, an alarm went off. This isn't good for me. I'm becoming something I don't want to be."
Wow. Wow. So you almost want to give him credit, don't you? Right? That he's playing this team sports game, watching a bunch of Proud Boys, I guess, jump somebody, jump a counter protester. And you know, he's cheering along, but he's got this little voice of his conscience coming in and saying, yeah, this is wrong. This is not who I am, right? But look at how he says it. It's not how white men fight. How the fuck does he got to make it racist? Right? What does this have to do with white men or any, what does this have to do with race? It's not how white men fight. Right? He's just got to inject that, like that. Oh no, this is nobody white, you know, would fight like this. This is why I don't like what the Proud Boys are doing.
Close quote. The Times was only able to unveil the contents of that text through interviews with people who spoke on the condition of anonymity. CNN reached out for comment. Fox declined. Carlson did not immediately respond.
Back with us now, writer at large for the New York Times, Jen Rittenberg, who helped break this story. We were talking about, you know, there's no, you can't just say, yes, this is ultimately what led to it, but it's also the way that this came out and how executives found out about this. And we're seeing this message right before they were set to go to trial. You know, what is the impact that had of when they learned about this?
Well, as we understand it, the board the trial was supposed to start on a Monday. Going into that weekend, the board had asked to see some of the redacted messages. There are negotiations about a potential settlement. The jury is coming together. So the board starts going through the messages, finds this one message that they find very troubling. Some senior executives were told hadn't been focused on this message. And it's not what you want to see when you're going into trial. A jury's being impaneled, and you're negotiating what's going to be a potentially very high number to get out of this, so you don't have to put something like this in front of a jury.
But for this text message being revealed to the board and Fox executives the night before the trial was supposed to begin, would there have been a trial and no settlement?
They were definitely working toward a settlement. And we were told that over the weekend, Lachlan Murdoch, one of the leaders of the company, had told his lawyers, let's start moving up on the number to get out of this anyway. I mean, that trial was going to be potentially disastrous on so many levels. So, but here again, you see, when it comes to Tucker Carlson, the issue here is that he's playing an outsized role in terms of problems in the case for them, when he's really not a huge part of the case. And that represents the trouble with Tucker Carlson to management at this point, among other things.
And the questions that still remain of why they did not settle sooner, because all of this damaging information came out, though obviously this came out as a part of good reporting. Abby Grossberg is the former Fox News producer who is now suing the network, and she was on with Anderson last.
But Kevin McCarthy said no.
What do you mean he wanted to do that live on air?
His plan was to have Kevin McCarthy come on the show. So fast forward to January 5th, they start asking me to book McCarthy on the show that night.
Fox were totally false, and I do think this line about this is how white men fight may have been the last straw for them. There made it harder to pretend anything else. The rest of the text is very dark and reflective, but I think less likely to be the thing that triggered his firing.
Yeah, and we haven't seen.
Okay, so anyway, that's CNN saying that they think that this is not how white men fight was the reason that Fox News fired Tucker. There's more to this, right? And I don't know why they're.
Let me say this. Not only was Fox not shocked at what was in there, Fox did not just find this out when they claimed they did. They knew about this. This is all a lie. It's all a lie. I don't know why. I can speculate as to why they're trying to put out fake reasons why they fired Tucker Carlson. But what I'm really shocked about is the lack of skepticism by mainstream reporters. Like, you're not going to go after, like, why are they doing this? Why are they putting out this stuff? All right, maybe to embarrass Tucker Carlson, but they didn't fire him because they were so shocked to find out that's not the way white people did they ever watch his show? But that's not even that. Well, I'll get into this later. But there's, even in the stories that report this, make it clear that they almost for sure knew that for sure that they found out about that text a long time ago. A long time ago. So this is, I don't buy it.
They were so taken aback it took them this long to act.
So you're seeing how online media, this is 2 years ago, right? But online media is having to do the job that mainstream media is no longer doing, right? They see that message and they're like, oh, this is why they fired him. The Fox didn't think that was a good look to be saying racist shit on text, right? So they had to fire him, right? In reality, there's more.
2021. It's the next day. It could be actually, 4:18 p.m. UTC. What is UT? I don't even know what the UTC is.
Universal. Oh my God. It's like Greenwich Mean Time.
That'll be 12 Eastern time.
Okay, so it is the day after January 6th at 12 Eastern time. Boy, what is UTC?
12:18 Universal
Coordinated
time.
Universal time.
Oh,
Primary
weird.
Time standard by
According to the Times. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching video of people fighting on the street in Washington. A group of Trump guys surrounded an Antifa kid, started pounding the living shit out of him. It was 3 against 1 at least. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously. It's not how white men fight.
So yeah, the irony that other than the racist shit that he injects into there, it's like one of the most decent things I've ever heard Tucker Carlson or honestly anybody in the right say. This is kind of refreshing, right? That most of the time the right is just like kill him, anti, like right, the kill Antifa, right? And it's like what you're seeing is a different face in private than we're seeing in public. Now, chat, what I really want to get at is some of the things that Tucker said about Trump. That's proving to be a little more hard to dig up. This was a few years ago now, right? And, the story is kind of multifaceted. There's a bunch of different texts. Really, seriously, I need, okay, what's this? Most replayed.
Brokering who would be their next speaker.
Yeah, I mean, they believed that he could broker who was speaker, House Speaker. He wanted to do that live on air, but
I think they're just talking about like the power that Tucker, inordinate amount of power that Tucker Carlson had. Anyway, chat, I'm gonna put it back on the Tucker conversation with Ted Cruz. Let me see if I can dig up these texts.
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not.
And I also want to let you know really quick. Okay, we're at 21 right now out of 100. This is gonna be a fairly quick stream. So if you want bonus content, first of all, look at the bonus content that's available on the main YouTube stream. Okay, if you're on Twitch, go over to YouTube, take a look at it, vote on what you want. If you're on the short stream, you can go and vote on what you want to, right? We only get this if that 21 becomes 100 by the end of the stream. And I'm letting you know that I don't have a lot of time today. All right. So if you want bonus content, Ezra Klein's DashCon, that's the Abundancapalooza cringe event that was going on. Ethan Klein roasted by NCR. That's NCR, New California Republic, NSR, North Star Radio. That is the new Comrade Casey video, right? We've got an update on passports, and we've also got Adam Friedland on Stabby's Word. If any of that stuff sounds good to you, right? The only way we're going to get it is if that 21 goes to 100. When does that happen? What does that go up? Every time you do a super chat, super sticker, if you get yourself a membership, or if you gift memberships to people, if you support me on Throne or sign up for my Patreon, or if you support me on Twitch, if that stuff doesn't happen, I'm going to disappear like Cinderella at midnight. All right. So I'm just letting you know that right now. I'm streaming on vertical too, so I won't be able to hit this very much. I won't be able to remind you that is slipping away, but it is in fact slipping away, as is the butterfly goal right now. So if any of that means anything to you over in the main chat, make it happen, right? Because that's the only way we get bonus content. Otherwise, I'm going to watch this and I'm going to get the fuck out. All right, proceed.
Naive, even utopian. You don't think humans are all. Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's
why the free market
conservative
works.
to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us. And I'm not.
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that, and
by the way,
I'm not mad at them. But you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know. Hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming. I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest.
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president of the United States and several precedents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
Sure, I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway. And by the way, the Brits are, the Canadians are. Why
don't you say the real thing? We're spying on them. Why don't you just say that? That's the explanation right there. We're spying on them too. All right, that's the answer. But you won't fucking say that, Senator.
Well, I'm not for that at all. Okay. I think it's disgusting. But
I gotta make a point to Twitch moderation. Okay, I see that you're dealing with some pretty toxic stuff that may be coming at you from Shorts chat. If somebody's saying something that is like across the line, don't just ban them. Report them. All right. And just understand, if you're going to come in my Twitch chat and say unhinged shit, Twitch has a terms of service that's a lot stronger than YouTube's. You will lose your account. It's not worth it. All right? It's not worth it. If you can't talk like a human being, then shut the fuck up. All right? Because we will snatch your fucking Twitch account right out of your greasy little hands. All right? We'll make you buy a VPN.
But we don't actually pay their, we're not their most meaningful.
Thank you, Funkmaster.
Sort of paying for the operations of the
So
British
I
government.
gotta say, and this is, it's weird. We're talking about isolationists, the obsession with Israel. Why is Israel?
Oh, I don't think I'm obsessed with Israel.
Okay, but I think a lot of people are. And like the question, Israel spies on us. Well, so does every other country. Why are you mad at Israel?
I guess.
No, this is a hilarious talking point. You hear this from Ethan Klein. You hear this from a lot of people, right? That if you have a problem with the genocide that Israel is currently doing, if you have a problem with the destabilizing role that Israel is playing in world politics, right? Well, then you're just so obsessed with Israel because, look, I can find Sudan, I can find Yemen, I can find other genocides, I can find other, bad actors, and why aren't you obsessed with them? Because we're not funding those bad actors. We're not paying for the genocide. Well, actually, we were paying for the genocide that Saudi Arabia. Yeah, actually, with the Yemen thing, it would be nice if more people were aware of that and more people had fought back against the United States funding Saudi Arabia, who was funding, who was, conducting a genocide in Yemen, right? But yeah, they'll try to do the distraction thing. No. You are not slipping out of this. You are not wriggling away. All right. You are not going to be able to be like, look at that person over. Can you imagine that, chat? You get stopped by a cop for speeding, all right? And then you see somebody come down the highway kind of fast, and you're like, officer, they were speeding too. Stop writing the ticket that you're writing for me and go chase them down, go radar gun them and catch them for speeding, right? That doesn't fucking work. That doesn't work. You're still getting a speeding ticket, right? But somehow people are so silly that they'll fall for this shit of like, why are you obsessed with Israel? Why is it all about Israel? Why is it always with Israel? Because Israel keeps on killing fucking kids. That's why. Yo, Sarah, thank you for the butterfly. Thank you for the butterfly chat. Butterfly indeed. Anyway, sorry to be like hurry. I don't know, chat. I'm like I'm on a mission today. I gotta make sure I get my trip planned.
No, I'm hard.
That's why I'm gonna end the stream hard when it's over. But yeah, if we can get to 100 by the end of it, I'll do as much of a bonus content as I possibly can. And as always, you can let me know in the chat which of these topics you want to see as your bonus content, and I will put your money where your mouth is and add it as a percentage to the topic of your choice. But we have limited time to do that, so if we could front load any of those considerations, that would be awesome.
I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel...
From AIPAC.
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby. It's the AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action Committee.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress.
This guy is slippery. This guy is really slippery, and I guess I'm glad that a Republican operative is finally onto him. Like, I feel like they should have fucking burnt Ted Cruz for clout years ago. Obviously, I don't mean that literally. I mean that he's a slippery, snivelly little worm. He's a very obvious liar, right? When you expose him as a journalist, it tends to be interesting. It tends to pop off, and Tucker did pop off with this. It's making me wonder why nobody did this earlier, because I don't think Ted Cruz is an asset. I don't think Lindsey, there's so many Republicans that you can point to are like, why does that asshole have a job? Right? These are the people that get voted for by their constituents. Why is this guy getting voted for? Why is this fucking worm getting voted for?
13 years ago,
yes,
with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that. AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC...
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who work at AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, Ted Cruz is actually right here. All right. Now I want to see if I can kill some parasites here, chat. By parasites, I mean brainworms. All right. AIPAC serves an American constituency of people who have been, somewhat brainwashed into supporting Israel, right? There's an entire narrative that they sell that Israel is necessary for the safety of Jewish people. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is no force on earth at the present moment that puts Jewish people in danger more than Israel, especially with its attempt to conflate itself, to conflate an ethno-state with the Jewish people. But, the whole thing of AIPAC runs everything. Like, look, Washington is a swampy place. And people that, that organize PACs and donate do tend to get their way. This isn't Israel reaching out and projecting force into the United States. These are Americans who have been sold a narrative about Israel their entire life, where they feel like it is somehow existentially important for their survival, when in actuality, Israel is putting them in existential danger, right? And I would say that the United States being in league with this, global pariah state that Israel has become, this apartheid ethno-state that Israel is, it has more to do with American foreign policy goals, be they neoconservative or neoliberal, than it does with the the agitation. Now, what does AIPAC actually do? It takes out people like Jamal Bowman, right? It replaces Democrats that are that have any kind of backbone against Israel with Democrats who have no backbone and will be tools of the military-industrial complex, will be in line with Israel/America's goals, right? That's what AIPAC really does, right? Republicans have a lot less to fear from AIPAC than Democrats. A lot of their attention is on races like Jamal Bowman's race, right?
America has thousands of colleges and universities, and a lot of them, unfortunately, well-educated students.
Oh my God.
It's not true at all. And if
It's
you
not true.
No. And
How much contact do you think AIPAC leaders have for the government of Israel?
no idea. I
Any,
imagine
you think?
some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC
Do you think
because
there's
AIPAC's
any
not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade, would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure. Like if.
So I'm not mad about that.
I want to make sure I clarify something really quick, okay? In saying that Israel is like the 51st state to the United States, in saying that Israel is a tool of America, not the other way around, I am not trying to let this, apartheid state that's currently conducting a genocide, I'm not trying to let them off the hook, all right? I am just making sure that we don't let their sponsor, the United States of America, off the hook by saying that somehow America is controlled through, lobbying groups like AIPAC, right? Understand that this is the establishment in Washington that supports America/Israel's goals, which are pretty much the same. Definitely when it comes to Iran, you can see that pretty clearly.
A million countries.
Israel functions as America's projection into the Middle East, a realm that it wants to control because of the energy production in the area, because of the strategic value of the Middle East. The United States uses Israel as its unsinkable aircraft carrier in the area, and that Israel's not doing anything that the United States does not want it to do.
Countries that lobby Washington, I like a lot of those countries, including Israel.
But AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah,
and
but
why
because
aren't
what
they,
you're saying is false.
Why aren't they registered as a foreign lobby?
Because they're not.
They're not a foreign lobby.
No, they're not. And this is that there's a fever swamp. Look,
it's not a fever swamp. These are very reasonable questions. And
he's barking up the wrong tree. There is a lot that AIPAC / the American military / the Israeli military is doing wrong, but he's barking up an anti-Semitic tree when you don't need a simple consultation of Occam's razor will yield to you the actual dynamic that's going on.
You've accused me of being obsessed with Israel, which I'm not.
I actually haven't. I've said
and of being
isolationist
feverish about it, which I'm not at all. I find it's a very tender spot when you ask it, and I don't know why.
So, Tucker, all right, let's go back. I was first elected to the Senate in 2012. I came in Obama's second term. And I actually saw AIPAC be badly wounded in a way they never came back from. And the second term is when Obama did the Iran nuclear deal. And the Iran nuclear deal, I think, was catastrophic. And AIPAC went all in lobbying against it.
Yeah.
And they failed. And I was the leading opponent of the Iran nuclear deal.
Oh, I know. They definitely failed, yes.
They failed. And what happened, the Obama White House told every Democrat, when I got here, there used to be real bipartisan support for Israel. That has largely disappeared. And it's the Obama nuclear deal that caused it, because the Obama White House told every Democrat, pick. You either stand with Israel or you're a Democrat and you stand with the Obama White House. And almost every single Democrat member of Congress said, I'm a Democrat first, to hell with Israel. And then I watched as
Well, in terms of voting for the Iran nuclear deal, which actually was in the interest of Israel too, right? I mean, this might be, an area where you see some separation between the Obama State Department and between Netanyahu's Israel, right? And you also saw this in terms of the settlements, right? You saw some disagreements about how Israel, is prosecuting the U.S. agenda in the Middle East, right?
AIPAC, every one of those Democrats got reelected, and AIPAC.
But it's so wild that he thinks that AIPAC is like a dead, like entity that AIPAC doesn't have any effect anymore. They literally just kicked Jamal Bowman out of his seat, right? And I feel like one other, oh my God, chat, who was the other person that went down in her primary this year or this last year?
AIPAC did nothing about it, and it dramatically reduced AIPAC's influence.
I agree. I watched it happen.
And by the way, I told AIPAC, I said, look, the analogy, if the NRA was supporting a bunch of politicians and cared about the Second Amendment, and you had politicians that vote to confiscate people's guns, and the NRA turned around and raised money for the people who voted to confiscate guns, you know what? No one would ever care what they said again.
So you're making the case that AIPAC is not as powerful as people say it is, and I completely agree with you. I've watched that, and I'm not making the case that AIPAC is all powerful and they're running everything and putting fluoride in the water. I'm not making that case at all, because that's not true. I'm only trying to get to the question of what AIPAC is, and I don't think you're being straightforward about it. AIPAC is lobbying on behalf of the interests of a foreign country, and they're not registered. And you're saying, no, that's not true. You're saying that they don't coordinate with the Israeli government.
Of course, I coordinate. Do they talk with them? I don't know what they do. I can tell you.
But why don't you care? Isn't it meaningful if a foreign government...
Hey, I talk with Israel all the time.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Foreign countries all the time.
But the law is, and a lot of people have been prosecuted under this law, that if you are lobbying on behalf of foreign government, you must register. That's it. It's really simple. And I don't know why, if I'm working from Malaysia or Qatar or Belgium, and I'm working on behalf of its government's interests through a group of Americans who are representing the friendship between those two nations, I have to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and if I don't, I can go to jail. And people have gone to jail, including people I know. So I don't understand why we don't just be honest and say they're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government, they're coordinating with the government. You know that that's true.
That is not only not true, that is false.
They're not coordinating with the Israeli government?
Do you know how AIPAC raises money?
What?
For elected officials, like what they do, like what the actual mechanics is?
I get it. I mean, they go to people who are sympathetic to Israel and raise money and then send it to candidates who agree with them.
So what they'll do is, so in my last election, AIPAC endorsed me. And they'll host a fundraiser. And they'll host a fundraiser in Dallas or Houston or Atlanta or New York or LA. And they'll do a fundraiser, and they'll get someone who will host it, and it's usually a business owner, lawyer, doctor, or someone who hosts it. And you get typically at an AIPAC fundraiser 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 people who live in that city,
right?
Who care about a strong U.S.-Israel relationship.
Yeah.
And if they have 50 people, each of them writes a $1,000 check, and you raise $50,000.
Yeah, I've been to an AIPAC fundraiser. Okay. I know what it looks like.
But that is not. And by the way, there's no representative of the Israeli government there. You have, when you're in Dallas, you're meeting with...
This is such a false and silly conversation. I know all this. The question is are AIPAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government to any extent?
Okay, that's
a really
different
simple
from
question.
lobbying on behalf of.
It's a simple question. Are AIPAC's goals shaped by the goals of the Israeli government? And I'm just going to ask you that question straightforwardly. And if you say no, I think we both know that's not true.
Okay, are they shaped by?
Are they coordinating with the Israeli government?
Are they talking with them? Yes.
Is Israel
directing them? You want to talk about FARC?
I mean, the real question is, should we have money in politics, right? Let's cut all this nonsense out, all right? Yeah, should AIPAC be disbanded? Fuck yes. Fuck yes. So should the NRA. So should a lot of these organizations, right? The Supreme Court fucked us back when they said that, corporations are people and therefore have a right to free speech, right? They fucked us over even before that when they allowed, more campaign contributions into presidential politics that got us Ronald Reagan, right? There needs to be a wall between money and politics, the way that there never was a real wall against church and state. I mean, the way there was supposed to be one between church and state, right? There needs to be a firewall, ironclad, and that even something that it's on the it's Congress's responsibility to not even allow the appearance of not corruption or even the appearance of corruption, right?
The law on lobbying on behalf of someone, It is, I hire you and you lobby on behalf of me. I direct you. Does Israel direct AIPAC? No, they are not lobbying on behalf of them. Do they care about them? Yes, but...
Do you think that, it's just interesting because what you're now describing in a very defensive way, I will say, is foreign influence over our politics.
No.
And you began, and it's so transparently obvious to everybody. I don't know why you would be embarrassed of it. You've said that you are sincerely for Israel. I believe you. I don't think you have some weird agenda. You seem to be sincere.
By the way, Tucker, it's a very weird thing. The obsession with Israel, when we're talking about foreign countries,
it's hardly an obsession.
You're not talking about Chinese, you're not talking about Japanese, you're not talking about the Brits, you're not talking about the French. The question, what about the Jews? What about the Jews?
Oh, like I'm an anti-Semite now. Senator,
you're asking the questions, Tucker. You're asking, why are the Jews controlling our foreign policy?
Senator,
that's what you just asked.
Hardly saying that, and I have.
That is exactly what you just said.
Well, actually, I can speak for myself and tell you what I am saying.
Good.
On behalf not simply of myself, but on of my many Jewish friends who would have the same questions, which is to what extent, and it's interesting you're trying to derail my questions by calling me an anti-Semite, which you are.
I did not.
Of course you are. And rather than be honorable enough.
So chat, this is a really interesting occurrence. I just want to point this out, all right? We have a real emergence of weaponized anti-Semitism in this country, of people being called anti-Semitic because they're speaking out against the actions of the Israeli government. This requires a conflation of the Israeli government and the Jewish people, which is something that there's two groups of people that want that. They want you to see Israel, think Jews. They want you to see Jews, think Israel, right? Right? There's two groups of people. One is Zionist, both, let me divide this group further, right? Zionists, you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. In fact, most Zionists in the United States of America are actually Christian. They are Zionists. They believe in the mission of greater Israel. That means Israel, an expanded Israel, an Israel that's taken over the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, maybe pushed into the Sinai, maybe pushed into Lebanon, maybe pushing into Syria, just taking pieces after piece after out of Middle Eastern countries, right? Because they believe in the end times prophecy. They want the Jewish people to inhabit those realms to fulfill their Messiah prophecy, that Jesus comes back when the Jews are returned to Israel, right? And then there's this great big war in which 2/3 of them are killed, and the 1/3 that's left, well, they see the light, and they see the light, and they convert to Christianity. They accept Christ, right? So that's a pretty anti-Semitic plan right there. 2/3 of Jewish people die. 1/3 of them are converted to Christianity. Hence, there's no more. That's an eliminationist plan for. Yeah, and yet you have, kind of an alliance between the Christian Zionists and the Israeli Zionists, right? And they both conflate the Jewish people with the country of Israel. The other group that want to conflate the Jewish people with the country of Israel are anti-Semites, right? They want to blame all Jewish people for what Israel does. And they want to, they oppose Israel because they see it as a the nation of the Jews, right? So two groups that want to make that conflation, and so Ted Cruz is weaponizing a charge of anti-Semitism against Tucker Carlson. All right. And I'm saying that because I don't think he knows or particularly cares if Tucker Carlson actually holds anti-Semitic views or is motivated by anti-Semitic reasoning or not. That being said, I also think that Tucker Carlson is probably kind of anti-Semitic, right? So these two things can exist at once. Both Ted Cruz disingenuously weaponizing accusations of anti-Semitism and Tucker Carlson being motivated with, being allied with, actual anti-Semites. And if you want to look at what's going on Twitter at any given time, yes, you will see a lot of real actual anti-Semitism, not me recasting opposition to Israel as being anti-Semitic, but I'm talking about actual just Jew hate exists on. So you're seeing it's a strange, manifestation of modern times here, where you've got somebody trying to weaponize a disingenuous accusation of anti-Semitism to shut somebody down. And the person that he's trying to shut down actually happens to be anti-Semitic in this case.
Enough to say it right to my face. You are in a sleazy feline way implying it, or just asking questions about the Jews. I'm not asking questions about the Jews.
Sleazy feline?
There's nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. It has to do with the foreign government.
Isn't Israel controlling our foreign policy? That's not about the Jews.
You said, I'm asking you.
And by the way, you're the one that just called me, I think, a sleazy feline. So let's be clear.
It's sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite, which you just did.
No, I just said, why is that the only question you're asking? You answer it. Give me another reason. If you're not an anti-Semite, give me another reason why the obsession is Israel.
I am in no sense obsessed with Israel. We are on the brink of war with Iran. And so these are valid questions.
But you're not asking about Iran or the
If I can finish, you asked me why I'm obsessed with Israel.
Yep.
3 minutes after telling me that when you first ran for Congress,
yeah, Cory Bush. Thank you, Fatima.
Which is to defend Israel.
Yes.
And I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel. I don't see a lawmaker's job as defending the interests of a foreign government, period. Okay. Any government, including the ones that my ancestors come from. So that's my position. That does not make me an anti-Semite. And shame on you for suggesting otherwise. And I mean that. And that's low, and you know it's low. So why don't you just answer my questions?
I'll answer. He sounds disingenuous when he says "shame on you," right? It feels like he's playing a game.
Straightforward, rational way. You certainly have the IQ to do it.
So shame on you is cute, by the way, Tucker.
It is. It's not cute. I'm offended.
Oh no, you're being like, I don't know, dude. I don't even know what this guy's real beliefs are. I'm trying to dig up the other tweets, chat, about Trump. Right? We got tweets from Tucker Carlson about Donald Trump. Text, about Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson texts Donald Trump. And the thing that I want to drive home with Tucker Carlson is that he is just he is never being real. Right? He is practiced at lying. It is his job, and he has accepted this, this duty. And just does it without even thinking now, right? Where there's a massive separation between what he says on his platforms versus what he is saying in when he's texting people. What is this? Love it or leave it.
Tesla is being investigated by regulators.
Oh my God! Do they not even have the timestamps?
And are the most expensive energy ever developed.
Ah, yes, the windmills, known for their extremely expensive fuel. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers said on Monday that the U.S. economy could experience a Wile E. Coyote moment as the Fed raises interest rates to tame inflation. Oh, I don't think it's all that bad, said Vice President Kamala Harris before running face first into a brick wall with a tunnel painted on it. And then, moments later, President Biden ran right through the tunnel that for her,
oh my God.
Grandfather's use of social media says more about the mind of the left-wing operative making the implication than it does about Randy McNally. Yeah, shame on you filthy-minded libs. It's because of you that grandfathers can't innocently comment, keep up the good work on young men showing hole anymore. The spokesman went on to say, does he always use the proper emoji at the proper time? Maybe not. You see, in the Lieutenant Governor's Day, eggplant emoji followed by sweaty face emoji meant may Christ be with you. Amazing. Marianne Williamson officially announced her bid for the presidency this week, telling reporter of the Fox News Dominion defamation lawsuit revealed that Tucker Carlson was as sick of Trump as the rest of us after the 2020 election. On January 4th, 2021, Carlson texted a colleague, "We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait." Carlson added, "I hate him passionately." This raises the question, what other text did Tucker send that could have come from my phone? Does he text some Nazi grifter his Elden Ring build? Carlson wrote in another text, "That's the last 4 years. We're all pretending we got a lot to show for it because admitting what a disaster it's been is too tough to digest. But come on."
He's talking about Trump's first term, right? This is not what he said on Fox News, this is not what he says on his show on X. He presents a very different persona, a persona who is very amicable towards Trump.
There isn't really an upside to Trump. Dance like no one's watching, love like you've never been hurt, text like you'll never be sued for defamation by a voting machine company. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer blasted Fox News and Tucker Carlson for selectively using security footage from January 6th.
Okay, anyway, that's what I was getting at. That's just that's the tip of the iceberg as far as how disingenuous Tucker is, how fake he is, and why you got to take everything that he says, even when he's making a point that is true, which happens in this interview a few times, right? You got to take it with a massive grain of salt.
Obsessed with the Jews. You just told me
you
that
just called me a
ran
sleazy feline.
It is sleazy to imply that I'm an anti-Semite for asking questions about how my government is
You want to
run.
count how many questions you asked about? What about the Jews? What about Israel? What about AIPAC?
I never asked about the Jews. I have. This has nothing to do with the Jews, whatever that means. This has to do with a foreign government. And once again, shame on you for conflating the two. They have nothing to do with each other. I'm talking about the influence
Israel
of
and Jews have nothing to do with each other?
All Jews, or an attack on all Jews, which I am not, nor would I ever be undertaking now. I'm not attacking anybody.
By the way, that's who Iran wants to kill, is all the Jews and all the Americans.
And I'm totally opposed to that, okay? But now, because
Except you don't want to do anything about it.
decisions need to be made.
We can talk about those decisions.
And I plan to.
Good.
But I just want to get a sense of whether you think, having described yourself as an America First person whose only criterion for judgment on foreign policy is America's national interest, to what extent you're influenced by a foreign government, which gives you a lot of money through its lobby, and you're claiming this has nothing to do with the foreign government. They're not coordinating. Yes, they're spying on us, but it doesn't bother you. And I'm sort of wondering, like, what is this? This is one of the weirdest conversations I've ever had.
I'll tell you what, and I'll answer any question you like, but let's try to...
Are you going to call me an anti-Semite again or no?
Let's try to ratchet down the temperature a little.
You're the one who went to motive. I'm asking honest questions.
I'm
just asking questions. Yes, that's it. That is what I'm doing.
Let's try to ratchet.
Dude is a Muppet. And I don't mean he looks like a Muppet. I mean he acts like a Muppet. Anyway, what is even going on here?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric is finding a home in right-wing media. Since the onset of the Israel-Hamas war, a handful of influential talk show hosts have spread anti-Semitic tropes to their millions of followers. One of the main charges? The disgraceful notion that a spike in anti-Semitism is merely Jewish people getting a taste of their own medicine after supposedly supporting anti-white sentiment. A reprehensible conspiracy theory that has been denounced by the Anti-Defamation League.
Any more comments? You know, that's funny because they didn't really... Yeah, Elon won this exchange with the ADL, right? This was when Elon retweeted, "You have said the actual truth," to someone who said that it is... that Jew essentially, spread the great replacement conspiracy, an idea that Jewish people are secretly engineering immigration into the United States to replace white Americans with other ethnicities, right? Is the great replacement, right? Elon responded to that with, "You have said the actual truth, my dude," or something like that, right? And the ADL called him out on it for a hot second before they got buried with hate on Twitter and eventually have essentially become Elon Musk's fig leaf, right? The ADL calls themselves the Anti-Defamation League. In practice, at least now, they are the Apartheid Defense League. That is their true function, right? That is what they actually do. But yeah, this is
Take Elon Musk.
Not going to hear that on CNN.
One of the world's richest men who has supported a host of right-wing conspiracy theories. Musk replied to a user online, publicly endorsing that notion, writing this week.
Yeah, so let me read the anti-Semitic thing that he's responding to.
"You have said the actual truth."
Jewish,
not just limited to Musk. Right-wing reported a host of right-wing conspiracy theories. Musk replied to a user online, publicly.
Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of dialectical hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest shit about how Western Jewish populations are coming to the distributing, and you have said the actual truth to the great replacement theory there.
Endorsing that notion, writing this week, you have said the actual truth. It's not just limited to Musk. Right-wing media figures Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Charlie Kirk have also peddled this idea.
It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing, anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans.
Kirk has also floated the conspiracy theory that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu knew about the October 7th terror attack, but chose to do nothing.
I'm not...
as far as that issue, I would take the same stance that I do on 9/11, right? I blame George W. Bush and Dick Cheney for 9/11, not because I think that they did it, not because I think that they engineered it, but I think they were negligent, right? Just like Netanyahu was negligent because the troops that would have been in the area to contain an outbreak of, like insurgents from Gaza were actually oppressing Palestinians in the West Bank at the time, right? They were too busy doing Zionism elsewhere, right? In order to defend the country, right? So there's definitely negligence there, and Israeli people should probably be pissed about it, right? But it's not. To say that Netanyahu, I don't know, let it happen is a little bit too strong.
I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it.
Meanwhile, Carlson and Owens have criticized Harvard donors for supposedly supporting anti-white racism, framing them as hypocrites for now being upset over anti-Semitism.
Well, wait a second. If the biggest donors at, say, Harvard have decided, well, we're going to shut it down now, where were you the last 10 years when they were calling for white genocide? You were allowing this. And then I found myself really hating those people.
People that are asking the question is, where were you as we have endured all of this?
You were paying for it, actually.
Right.
You were paying for it.
You were paying for it.
Because you were calling my children immoral for their skin color. You paid for that.
And
so why shouldn't I be mad at you? I don't understand.
So not a defense for students protesting against genocide and an apartheid state at colleges and universities. No, nothing like that, right? It is a claim of hypocrisy at Jewish people who are donors to those universities who withdrew those donations after the protests, since the universities did not clamp down on free speech, as hypocrites for being socially liberal on other issues. That's what you've got there, right? That's what we're seeing.
Conservatives have pushed back against the anti-Semitic rhetoric being spread by their peers. Ben Shapiro, co-founder of the Daily Wire, which employs Candace Owens, ripped her earlier commentary as disgraceful during a recent speech.
The question is about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Ridiculous.
Owens reached out to the Daily Wire for comment and has not media. Responding to Musk,
Greenblatt
attacks are surging across the U.S. and around the world. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the ADL, spoke out against
the Apartheid Defense League.
The commentary coursing through right-wing media. Responding to Musk, Greenblatt said, "At a time when anti-Semitism is exploding in America and surging around the world, it is indisputably dangerous to use one's influence to validate and promote anti-Semitic theory."
And this is the guy that defended Elon Musk when he did his Sig Heil, right? Jonathan Greenblatt doesn't give a fuck about anti-Semitism, doesn't give a fuck about fighting fascism. He is supporting fascism in Israel, and he's fighting its enemies in the United States, including the anti-Semite of the year, Hassan Piker. But that's a story for another day, chat. No, he didn't actually win. I think Candace Owens won anti-Semite of the year.
Down the temperature a little bit.
Picture the house of your dreams. Maybe it's got an outdoor pool in in America.
About politics, and Eddie Murphy in the movie is a con man who gets elected to Congress, and he's literally a con man who, the congressman dies, he has the same name, and so he runs and they get elected. And there's a scene in the movie where Eddie Murphy is a freshman member of Congress, and he's sitting down with a sleazy lobbyist. And he's asking the lobbyist, all right, what should my positions be on, I think they were talking about power plants and electrical transmission lines. And the lobbyist's like, well, what do you believe? And Eddie Murphy, the comment, said, I don't care. Whatever gets me the most money. I'll do whatever gets me the most money. And the lobbyist says, no. Pick a side. Doesn't matter what you pick. If you pick one side, we'll go shake down everyone who supports that side and they'll give you money. If you pick the other side, that's fine. We'll just go to the other side and shake down that. That's a little bit the way it works. And you often get leftists in the media who say, for example, if you support the Second Amendment, as you do and I do, well, you're just bought and paid for by the NRA. And that actually is backwards. I believe in the Second Amendment because I believe in the Constitution. Now, am I proud that the NRA supports me? Sure, because people who care about the Second Amendment want to support leaders who fight for it. But it gets it backward. Look, AIPAC, when I ran for the Senate, AIPAC didn't support me. I supported Israel before they supported me. I'm happy to have their support because they share my objective.
No, but you're missing it. I'm not suggesting that you're bought and paid for. I'm not saying that. I want to go back and take sincere.
I want to go back and take the transcript because you just said a minute ago, I'm slightly paraphrasing, but are you lobbying for a foreign government because they pay you a lot of money? That's basically what you said. So you are suggesting that.
Let me just be clear about what I think. Your views seem totally sincere.
Yes.
You take money from people who agree with you.
Yeah.
I believe that. I
even take money from people who disagree with me.
I'm only trying to get to the question of to what extent is the U.S. government influenced by other governments? And it's a lot.
Of course.
It's hardly just Israel. It's hardly just Israel. I don't think Israel's the main one. There are lots of governments. China is a massive influence on this city.
And it's a huge problem.
As you know, I couldn't agree more. And there are lots of other. The UK, which is a truly sinister place, in my opinion, as a ethnic Brit, I can say. I think that's my view. Maybe you disagree.
I think they're on the wrong path. I love the Brits, but their government has gone off the rails.
Without even getting into that, I'm just saying I don't think Israel's the only one. But it's the only one where you're instantly called an anti-Semite for asking questions. And it's also the only government that no one will ever criticize. And
people criticize Israel every minute of every day. Like the only government that people will not criticize, Rashida Tlaib just tweeted out calling Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal.
Rashida Tlaib? No.
You said no one will criticize.
No, I'm talking about Republicans that I would vote for, including you. And I'm saying, whatever. I don't even like talking about Israel. What I care about, I never do because it's not worth being called anti-Semites from AIPAC recipients. But now we are on the verge of joining a war, and I just want to be clear about why we're doing this.
All right, so, and let's get into Iran momentarily, but you suggested it was a strange thing that I said a minute ago that when I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. And what you didn't ask is why. So let me tell you why.
No, you said I was obsessed with Israel, and you had just told me that your driving motive to get to the Senate was to defend Israel. I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel.
Okay,
I don't even think about Israel.
Tucker, words matter.
Uh-huh.
And you know that. I said I resolved to be the leading defender of Israel, and you said your driving motive, the reason you're in the Senate.
You want to be the leading defender of Israel. I would think if I ran for Senate, I'd be like, there are people dying of drug ODs on the street.
My driving motive is to fight for Texas and America and to fight for jobs and to fight for the Constitution. And you played a very, very careful word game of eliding
You're the one who said it, not me.
So you still haven't asked why, but I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian, growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel.
So yeah, there's a few real gotcha moments in this interview. I don't know. I don't think we've gotten to the point where he asks about questions about Iran that Ted Cruz is unable to answer. But he is asking for motivation. Ted Cruz is saying the Bible, and Tucker's going to kind of call him on the whether.
So that's
whether he knows what he's talking about when it comes to the Bible.
The Bible, as a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis, but so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
Hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out the.
It's a wild thing to say. I'm sure it's something like, you know, God speaking to the children of Israel and saying something like, "Those who bless you, blessings will come upon their heads, and those who curse you, curses shall come upon their heads. For I, the Lord your God, have," you know, it's something like that. And yeah, Christians do look at that shit and be like, "Oh yeah, this means that we have to like Israel. We have to be positive towards Israel because it's in the Bible. Blessings will come on our heads and curses will come on our heads." Even though they think that, you know, the Christian, you know, Zionists tend to think that they, not the Jewish people, are the chosen people, that Jewish people, you know, fucked up and pissed off God, and that's the reason for the diaspora and everything, and that the blessings have now moved to them, even that they can't even keep their own theology straight, right? But yeah, they will take stuff in the Bible to, you know, have a lot of meaning in the modern day that it obviously was not written for that. It obviously, you know, was meant something different in the time and place that it was written.
Theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what, hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected.
He's the prime minister.
Right.
What?
But no, he's just kept the country in war setting at the moment where they want to kick him out of office, right? No, he's not a dictator. He's just given them fucking perpetual war ever since, you know, ever since his leadership was destabilized, right?
Just like, you know, America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle
This is
there.
silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
You believe
Israel.
that's what God was talking about
Yes.
in Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is. So I don't know if we can.
I don't remember the scriptural citation. But, okay, I keep...
It's like Genesis 16 or something like that. But yes, it's in the earlier part of the book. But the point is...
All right, Tucker, you keep interrupting me before I finish my sentence.
It's just important to know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're... So you're saying as a Christian, if I believe in Jesus, I have to support the modern state of Israel?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm explaining for me what my motivation is.
But okay, so I'm just trying to understand. You said God tells you to support the modern state of Israel in the Bible, in some place in the Bible that you heard about, but you don't know where it is. That's your theology?
You're going back, am I a sleazy feline again? I mean,
if you accuse me of anti-Semitism again, I will say that, but I don't think you will.
Try to be a little less condescending. I'm trying to have a conversation.
Condescending. You're throwing this stuff out, and it's my job to figure out what you're talking about. Okay, but I don't understand.
But you're not letting me.
Okay. I'm sorry. I want to be polite.
That is, for me, a personal motivation. But I also, what I was about to say, I don't believe my personal faith, not everyone who I represent is a Christian. It's not an argument for me to give that we should do this because of my faith. And so as an elected official, I don't give that as the reason we should support Israel. That is a personal motivation for me, but I don't think it is the reason we should. The reason that I am the leading defender of Israel is because Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East, an incredibly troubled part of the world, and supporting Israel benefits America. And the clearest illustration of that is what is happening right now. Let me just make this point, and then...
Okay, and then I'll just ask what you mean. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, Iran, I think the most acute national security threat facing America right now is the threat of a nuclear Iran. I think China is the biggest long-term threat, but acute and near-term is a nuclear Iran.
Okay.
Even though the United States intelligence has concluded that Iran would take probably years to get a nuclear weapon together, to be able to deploy effectively a nuclear weapon should they change their mind from their current trajectory, which is decidedly not going for a nuclear weapon, and decide to get, which after what happened with Israel attacking them and after the threats of the United States attacking them, that's actually a logical thing for them to do now. The U.S. has taught the lesson to the world that you are not safe if you do not have a nuclear weapon. You are subject to regime change. You are subject to intervention at any time that you displease us if you don't have nukes. If you're North Korea and you do have nukes, we'll saber rattle a whole bunch, but we won't do anything. We won't do anything to you, right? That's the lesson that's being taught, right? But I mean, this is, you know, the estimation of how close is Iran to a nuke is actually quite far away. And that's from the Trump administration's intelligence. You know, it's from Tulsi Gabbard, as who I'm thinking of here, right? But he's like, oh, it's an immediate existential crisis, right? Bullshit. It's an opportunity for the Israeli-American complex to take out an old enemy and to put the squeeze, if you're America, further on China. That's what this is. There's no existential crisis. There's no danger. This is a target of opportunity. This is a war of choice.
And I think Israel is doing a massive favor to America right now by trying to take out Iran's nuclear capacity. And the reason I view Iran differently, we talked before about Iraq. I opposed the Iraq war. We talked about Syria. I opposed military intervention in Syria. The reason for that is those did not pose a threat to the United States. I think Iran is markedly different. Number one, the Ayatollah is a religious zealot. He is a lunatic.
Cerebral pugilist, you just got weaseled, and that's a good thing. Wow, it's amazing.
But a particularly dangerous kind of lunatic, because he's driven by religious fervor. When he says death to America and death to Israel, I believe him. And I think Iran is trying to get a nuclear weapon because
I'm sorry.
There is a very real possibility they would use a nuclear weapon.
Chad, I'm pretty sure that Iran has been saying death to America since like the 70s.
But now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
Since the 70s. If you think that's a massive existential threat, right, you're fucking deluded.
So you want to ask, how does supporting Israel benefit us? Right now, this tiny little country, the size of the state of New Jersey, is fighting our enemies for us and taking out their top military leadership and trying to take out their nuclear capacity. That makes America much safer.
So the president has said repeatedly Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon,
yes,
and he will do whatever it takes to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. He said that like 100 times. He clearly means it. I think he will use force to effect that if he feels he has to. I think he's been really clear about that. I don't know, but it seems that way. Do you feel that? Do you think that's correct?
Whether he would use force to stop a nuclear weapon, I think he has put that option on the table.
He certainly suggested. I mean, I have literally no idea what's going to happen, but just reading his statements, he's made that really clear.
So what he has been very clear about, and I spoke with the president on Sunday, is he has been very clear to Iran that if they attack U.S. servicemen and women, there will be real consequences and I think very serious military response.
By the way, this is a sidebar, but I just can't resist. The Prime Minister of Israel said that Iran tried to assassinate Donald Trump twice.
Yeah, I read your newsletter this morning, and
but do you believe that's true?
I think it was sort of a word game. What is true is Iran is trying to assassinate Donald J. Trump, and they have hired hitmen. Now, you pointed out...
No, he said that they have tried twice to kill him, and I don't know that... I don't have any evidence that's true, but I sort of wonder...
This is a conspiracy theory for which there's no evidence.
If that is true, why aren't we at war with them already?
Okay, and I read your newsletter this morning, and I thought it was playing word games to draw a political point.
How's that a word game? It's my president. And
can I tell you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. You rightly pointed.
It's my president who I can't wait to get rid of. I can't wait until he's no longer relevant. This is what Tucker said about Donald Trump. He talks out of both sides of his mouth.
There's no evidence that this clown in Butler, Pennsylvania, who shot the president was working for the Iranians. I don't think he was. There's no evidence of that. Although I would like to know more about who he was and what's going on. But I don't find it plausible that he was working for the Iranians. So was that caused by the Iranians? No. But what is true, and what your newsletter didn't acknowledge, is it true or false that Iran is currently trying to murder Donald J. Trump and has paid hitmen to do so?
Well, that's the question, and I don't know the Butler, Pennsylvania thing.
Pennsylvania.
Let's just put that aside. I don't know.
So Netanyahu misspoke when he said those two assassinations were because of Iran. But what he
he just misspoke.
Saying that is right.
But trust what he's saying this time. All right, he misspoke those times. That was not true.
They're actively trying to murder Donald J. Trump.
Is there? Okay, so you're aware of a plot to kill Trump?
Yes. That Iran is paying for. And by the way...
Wait, when?
It has been over the last, I'd say, 18 months to 2 years.
In the United States?
In the United States, yes. And let me point out...
Has anyone been arrested?
They can't produce any proof of this, anything to suggest this, right? This is just a narrative.
For the Trump attempted assassination, no. But they are also actively paying Iranian hitmen to murder Mike Pompeo when he was President Trump's first Secretary of State, the first term, rather. John Bolton, when John Bolton was National Security Advisor to President Trump, and a guy named Brian Hook, who was Assistant Secretary of State.
Right.
During the Biden administration...
Wait, but hold on. Can we go back to Donald Trump because he's the president? No, it's a big deal. What do you mean? When no one has been arrested for these assassination attempts on Trump.
Yes.
They've hired hitmen. How do we know that?
All right, let me
back up here.
So the reason I brought up Pompeo, Bolton, and Hook, who are under active assassination attempts because of their service in the first Trump administration, under the Biden
administration... Well, they say that. I've never seen any evidence of it.
Can I give you the evidence?
Well, let's just stick with Trump.
No, because these are interrelated. So let me make a bloody point. Under the Biden administration, the State Department was spending $2 million a month providing security for Pompeo, Bolton, and Hook. And they did arrest Iranian hitmen at John Bolton's apartment complex who rented, I think, the apartment next to him and were actively trying to assassinate him, and they went and arrested them. So, yes, they caught Iranian hitmen. Now, it so happens Iran's not very good at it. And so they are actively trying. And in fact,
but what about Trump? He's the president. If there's a plot to kill Trump by the Iranians...
Okay.
You would have heard about it. He would have screamed from the rooftops, right? If they had any evidence to suggest that Trump, he has a huge persecution complex, chat, he would never shut up about that. That's how we know it's not true.
Okay, so you dispute that the Iranians are trying to kill Trump?
Of course. I mean, that's the most important question. The Prime Minister of Israel just said...
He's not disputing. You just haven't shown shit to suggest that that's even true.
There have been 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump by the Iranians. And I think it's a very fair question, maybe you disagree, to ask, what are you talking about?
Okay. And I agree with you that he misspoke.
So there weren't those 2 attempts?
There were 2 attempts, but the clown in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the other guy on the golf course were not connected to the Iranians. That's the part that he misspoke. But by the way, when you speak all the time, occasionally, what he said that was accurate is that Iran is actively trying to murder Donald J. Trump and has paid hitmen.
That's fine.
And he was conflating it with the 2 attempts.
I understand. But I just want to pull that thread because it's so important. I voted for Donald Trump. I campaigned for Donald Trump. Yeah. He's our president. And we're on the cusp of a war. So if there's evidence that Iran paid hitmen to kill Donald Trump and is currently doing that, where's that? Like, what are you even talking? I've never heard that before.
Okay.
Where's the evidence? Who are these people? Why haven't they been arrested? Why are we not at war with Iran?
That's a great question to ask.
How do you know that that's true?
We know that it's true because we have been told that by the military and our intelligence community for the last 2 years.
We meaning who?
Congress has and the public. I mean, we had multiple testimonies. I can send you testimony.
Do we know the names of the people or where this happened or what they tried to do to kill Trump?
We do not. We have not apprehended an Iranian hitman trying to kill him. We know that Iran is trying to do so.
In the United States?
Yes. And by the way, like Iran...
This just seems like a huge headline, and you're acting like everyone knows this. I didn't know that.
Iran put out a whole video about murdering Trump.
Right, but I've never heard evidence that there are hitmen in the United States. I mean, trying to kill Trump right now, we should like have a nationwide dragnet on this, and we should attack Iran immediately if that's true. Don't you think?
No.
If they're trying to assassinate our president?
They have been for 2 years.
Then
they
why
are
aren't we
enemies.
at war with them?
Well, we are trying to
Why don't we just nuke Tehran if they're trying to murder our president?
Oh my God. The point that he's trying to make here is that you know, that Ted Cruz is asserting something with no evidence, right? And that the response to this, if true, you would think it would be something, right? We've gotten no response, right? And that doesn't make sense. Obviously, wow, what a bad idea. What a bad idea. Nuclear first strike because our dear leader is threatened. In reality, chat, Trump has assassinated members of the the Iranian government, right? So, I mean, is there like motive to, for Iran to go after Trump? I guess so. But again, Ted Cruz does not seem to be able to show any kind of evidence.
There's nothing that you could do that would be worse for the United States than murdering Trump. And I just don't understand why you're not calling for the use of nuclear weapons against the Ayatollah right now.
Tucker does not mean that. Tucker probably would be happy if he woke up tomorrow and Trump was no longer president, right? He's made it clear he doesn't like Trump.
I'm serious.
But yeah, he talks out of both sides of his ass to keep that MAGA gravy train, that wingnut welfare that he's getting, to keep that shit going.
If you really believe they're trying
the
to
use
murder
of nuclear weapons, see,
whatever
that's part
it
of the
takes.
problem of. So
what do you mean? You don't seem to take the allegations seriously.
If he's going to go against Trump, it's going to be for his lack of fulfilling a campaign promise, like being not starting foreign wars.
If you believe they're trying to murder Trump,
it's going to be something where he can get people on his side. Tucker's never going to take he hasn't denounced Trump formally, because then he would have no constituency left to play with.
To stop what we're doing and punish them.
Can I ask something? And I mean this sincerely. So, all right, 20 years ago, you were, I think it's fair to say, in the interventionist world. You were a vocal,
big time.
You
big
were
time.
a vocal defender of the Iraq War.
I was a promoter of the Iraq War.
And you now, and look, I think you were mistaken. I think you were mistaken. That's okay. Look, people change and learn, and that's part of the journey of being human. Your views have moved, though. In my view, they've gone way too far the other end. And so
I'm
just
totally confused.
Why.
I'm saying, hold on. Wait, this is one of the weirdest conversations I've ever had. I'm saying if it's true that Iran is trying to murder Trump, we need to move militarily against Iran immediately. That's not isolationism. That's the most. That's a call to violence, which I am calling for. If we believe that Iran is trying to murder our president, we need to strike Iran.
Okay, but isolationists say things like, well, then just nuke them, which is what you just said, which is kind of a weird...
Because I'm upset, because I'm taking you seriously. You don't take your own statements seriously.
I take my statements very seriously.
So I've asked you, where's the evidence this is true? And you've said, well, they're trying to assassinate Brian Hook or something, which I'm against, by the way. I'm against hurting any American, period, no matter...
So you dispute that they're trying to murder...
I'm not disputing it at all.
And Bolton?
I'm not disputing it at all.
They literally arrested the hitman with Bolton.
I don't know why that's even relevant. I'm asking about the President of the United States.
Wait, it's not relevant that Iran hired hitmen to murder cabinet members in Trump's administration? That doesn't go to
I've already
how credible
said
is it that they're willing to spend money to do that?
Opposed to that.
Sarah, I can read part of this article that you mentioned in Vanity Fair. Unfortunately, it's paywalled, right? So only the first paragraph. All right. So you're talking about this article. Trump had no problem with Iran's Revolutionary Guard when he was doing business with its associates. According to an exhaustive report, the group the president just labeled as a terrorist organization, this is 2019, so Trump's first term, the group that he just labeled as a terrorist organization reportedly had financial ties to the Trump family business. All right, so on Monday, Donald Trump announced that his administration was designating the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran a terrorist organization for the first time in U.S. history. They'd classified another country's government as such, an action that flips the switch on a range of sanctions on the military unit and companies, individuals, organizations with ties to it. According to the New York Times, top CIA, Pentagon, Officials argued against the designation, saying it will allow hardline Iranian officials to justify deadly operations against Americans overseas, especially special operations units and paramilitary units working under the CIA. But the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton reportedly pushed for it and ultimately persuaded the president. This action will significantly expand the scope and the scale of the maximum pressure on the Iranian regime, Trump said in a statement on Monday. It makes it crystal clear the risks of conducting business. Okay, so none of the good part of the article do we get to read because Vanity Fair has paywalled their content. But yeah, that's the opening paragraph. It'd be nice if they put any of the pertinent information in there as usual. Journalistic practice, but
it's awful. I am against killing anybody, actually, and especially foreign government. Okay. I'm asking about your allegation and the Prime Minister of Israel's allegation that Iran is trying to murder the president.
Killing terrorists is a good thing. Killing people who are trying to murder Americans is a good thing. Because if you're America first, you want to protect America, and so killing Osama bin Laden was a fantastic.
But you don't really believe that they're trying to murder Trump, or you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Then why aren't you calling for military action against Tehran right now?
Because they're not very effective. In terms of hitmen, their hitmen are not very effective. I do think.
So they're hitmen, but not the bad kind, the efficient kind?
No,
what are you saying?
They're a weak country who is on its knees, and I think we need to.
Then why are we so afraid of them? Why are they the biggest threat if they're a weak country that's on its knees?
Because they're trying.
I'm trying to keep track.
They're trying to develop. Be a little less snarky.
I know, you're right. That is a problem that I have. I'm sorry.
They're trying to develop nuclear weapons. They are close to developing nuclear weapons. And even a weak country with a nuclear weapon. Look, I believe there is a very real possibility if the Ayatollah develops a nuclear weapon that he would detonate it either in Tel Aviv or New York or Los Angeles. And that would be utterly catastrophic. And I don't know what the chances are of that. Let me compare and contrast Iran to North Korea.
Wait, can I just ask one last question about trying to kill the president? You sincerely believe, you promise, that right now the Iranian government is trying to murder our president?
Yes.
You sincerely believe right now?
Absolutely.
And yet you are not calling for military action against the government that's trying to murder our president. Can you explain that?
I don't think they're very effective. I do think we should, by the way, America is
You're willing to take that risk?
I think we should protect the president and we should take out our enemies.
Well,
Israel is doing that right now.
But aren't they? Why would we outsource it to Israel if they're trying to? Your first
question was, why are you for regime change? That's a pretty good example of why I'm for regime change.
Okay, so you're saying we should just go in and take out the government of Iran. Why would we outsource it to Israel if they're trying to murder our president?
Okay,
you sound like the isolationist.
What I'm saying on any military judgment is there needs to be a cost-benefit analysis of what are the risks versus what are the benefits. In this instance, I think it is enormously in America's interest to do what Israel is doing right now, take out Iran's senior military leadership and take out their nuclear capacity. That is benefiting America, and it is a good risk reward. I would oppose invading Iran and putting boots on the ground to topple the government. If the risk got severe enough, I would support that, but I think the relative risk is not severe enough to justify that step at this time. What I would absolutely oppose under any circumstances is invading Iran and then staying and trying to turn them into a democracy. And part of where Iraq really went off the rails is not only did we topple someone who was fighting radical Islamic terrorists, who was a bad guy, but then we tried the vision of interventionists. It actually overlaps with the vision of a lot of Democrats. Let's go promote democracy in the world.
I agree.
And it is our military's job to kill the bad guys, to defend America. It's not their job to defend international norms. It's not their job. So I have zero desire for the U.S. military to turn Iran into Switzerland. Look, would it be nice if they suddenly became Switzerland? Sure. If I could wave a magic wand, great. But I'm not going to send your kids or my kids to be in front of guns to go make that happen.
Well, bless you for that. I think that is the lesson that I learned from Iraq. I promoted that war. Apparently, unlike you, I was dumber. And I think...
Is that even true? Was Ted Cruz against the Iraq War?
You just articulated the main lesson of it, which is it's hard to do that, and we're not good at it.
I'm guessing he wasn't in Congress at the time.
But I will, and so we are agreeing on that. I will say as a
vehemently agreeing.
As a corollary, that doesn't mean that horrible, evil dictators are okay. And going back to Reagan and the Cold War, we have lots of weapons. I am happy to highlight the brutality, the oppression, the human rights abuses of regimes, even though I don't want to invade them, because I think the bully pulpit of American leadership is really powerful. And I think dictatorships are terrified. So I've spent 13 years in the Senate. One of the things I do frequently is highlight dissidents in Iran and North Korea and China, in Venezuela. People are being tortured. Miriam Ibrahim in Sudan, who was sentenced to 100 lashes and then to be killed for the crime of being a Christian. And I repeatedly went to the Senate floor and shined a light on the government of Sudan. It was corrupt. It was evil. I practically begged Barack Obama, say her name. Ultimately,
I felt that way with the J6 prisoners. Yeah.
Yes. And look.
What?
There is power to speaking out. And ultimately, Obama never did say her name. He would not say her name. Ultimately, there was enough international condemnation. The government of Sudan let her go. And so she was not executed. And I met her.
Anyway, chat, let me just give you a check on Ted Cruz. He claims to be against the Iraq War. Cruz joined the George W. Bush campaign in 1999 as a domestic policy advisor. All right, so that's his... he's a lawyer before that. He joins the Bush campaign in 1999. He becomes Texas Solicitor General in 2003. So he is, I guess, during the time of the Iraq War, he's involved in Texas politics. He returns to private practice as a lawyer in 2008. And then is elected to the Senate in 2012. Right? And in 2012, really, Iraq was not an issue by that time, right? It's something that they might have they definitely talked about in 2006, the midterms, and that's what got the Democratic Congress elected. It's something that they would have talked about in the primary of 2008. Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton. One of the reasons that she lost is because she supported the war in Iraq. But yeah, not something that would have been talked about in 2012. So it may be that he's just lucky enough to have not been involved in any kind of government where his opinion on the Iraq war would have been relevant at the time. I can't really find evidence one way or another as to whether he supported the war. I mean, he was a Republican. He was a good Republican at the time, right? But let's see if there's anything about Iraq in here. Iraq. Yeah, the only thing is in 2023, he voted against repealing the authorized use of military force in Iraq, which is wild that shit is still in effect, right? This is a measure passed by the U.S., the House and the Senate that allowed the president at the time, George W. Bush, to take up war powers, which would normally something like that, or not normally, right? Because we haven't lived like that since Vietnam. But it's like the way that the Constitution is written, it should fall to the Congress to approve things like that, declarations of war, etc. In practice, the Congress has ceded that power to the president for a long, long time, and he voted against repealing this order that was still on the book, allowing the president essentially leeway to prosecute the conflict with Iraq any way that he chooses. It's really funny, yeah, because Biden is the president in 2023. Anyway, that's all I can find you on Cruz and Iraq.
So she had a 2-year-old son, Martin, and she gave birth to a little girl named Maya. And she was in leg irons in prison waiting for the death sentence. They were not going to kill her until she gave birth. And they told her, we will not kill you if you will renounce Jesus. And she refused. And I met her. She was in D.C. speaking at a conference.
Oh, my God.
And I have actually, I think it's policies by would be different.
Get off your soapbox,
Ted.
Ted.
On the shelf, I have a baseball cap that grass.
I don't care.
And I was consciously, I did that speech. I just said, I will not be shy about saying it, but for things that are praiseworthy.
I remember that. It was 2013.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way. I went to his cell at the Hanoi Hilton, and
oh, wow.
I agree.
McCain? Are they talking about McCain?
I just want to end by asking you specifically about what's going to happen next in Iran and what should happen next. So you've called for regime change. You've said you don't favor the U.S. military participating in any kind of regime change. You said you don't think, and bless you for saying this, that the U.S. military should try and turn it into Belgium.
Yeah.
Thank God. But there is a third option where it turns into Syria, where it's this open wound and it causes massive migration and further destroys Europe, as Syria has.
Yeah.
And that's a huge cost, and where lots of people die and religious minorities get murdered in Syria again. Are you worried about that?
Sure. And listen, that lots of bad things can happen. But going back to what we talked about, the principle of defending America, I agree with President Trump that Iran with a nuclear weapon is an unacceptable risk to America, and we need to stop it. I agree with President Trump, and I'll make a point.
But he's not for regime change.
He's not. So he and I disagree. Yeah, look, I think he thinks it would be better. He has not said he's for it. And you know what? Look, it is consequential when the President of the United States says, I'm for regime change. So I understand why he hasn't. What he has said is he's drawn a red line and said, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, and the only acceptable outcome is complete dismantlement. So they have centrifuges. They're enriching uranium right now. They're trying to develop a nuclear weapon. He said they must have complete dismantlement. I led 52 senators, Republican senators, in a letter where we said we agree with President Trump. That's the red line, complete dismantlement. I agree with President Trump. I agree with him supporting Israel, taking out Iran's military leadership, taking out their nuclear capability. And I'll point out, look, if you look the first term, I am hard-pressed to think of a single foreign policy decision Donald Trump made the first term that I disagree with. And that's not entirely accidental, because I spent a lot of time the first term in the Oval Office with him. And what happened in the first term often is you would have in the administration, you had interventionists in the administration, you had isolationists. And they disagreed. They would fight within the administration. And often what it would give is an opportunity for me to come in and say, hey, there's a middle path here that President Trump agreed with frequently. And it's worth noting, in the first term, he most assuredly was not an isolationist. Look, he took out General Soleimani, which I emphatically agree with. And in fact, I introduced a resolution that we voted on the Senate floor commending him for taking out General Soleimani, who was the leader of the IRGC and who was responsible for killing over 600 American servicemen and women. When Trump came in, ISIS had a caliphate that had grown up under Obama that was about the size of the state of Indiana.
This morning.
And Trump came in and utterly decimated them. He killed the terrorists, took away
and attacked my father. Donald Trump alleges that my dad was involved in assassinating JFK.
Not only that, Ted, Lion Ted Cruz, but you're the Zodiac killer.
Now, let's be clear. This is nuts. This is not a reasonable position. This is just kooky.
Is this going to be louder?
Donald Trump alleges that my dad was involved in assassinating JFK. Now, let's be clear. This is nuts.
So quiet.
This is not a reasonable position. This is just kooky. And while I'm at it, I guess I should go ahead and admit, yes, my dad killed JFK. He is secretly Elvis, and Jimmy Hoffa is buried in his backyard. You know, Donald's source for this is the National Enquirer. The National Enquirer is tabloid trash. but it's run by his good friend David Pecker, the CEO.
It is. It is. Isn't that guy that tried to cover up for him on? Yeah, that tried to do the. Oh my God! There's a thing that they do in tabloids. If what is it called, Chad? They kill the story by buying the exclusive rights to the story. So yeah, he pays Stormy Daniels ostensibly for, like, I want that story about Donald Trump, right? I want the exclusive. Don't talk to anybody else here. Sign this thing that says you won't talk to anybody else, right? And she signs it thinking he's going to interview her and there's going to be an article in the Inquirer. But surprise, surprise, this guy is Donald Trump's best friend. Catch and kill. That's what it's called. It's called catch and kill, right? So they catch the story by signing Stormy Daniels onto an exclusive, and they kill it by never coming out with it, right? And that effectively kills the story. He did that for Donald Trump.
Who's endorsed Donald Trump. And so the National Enquirer has become his hit piece that he uses to smear anybody and everybody. And this is not the first time. Donald Trump has used David Pecker's National Enquirer to go after my family. It was also the National Enquirer that went after my wife, Heidi. That just spread lies, blatant lies. But I guess Donald was dismayed because it was a couple of weeks ago the Enquirer wrote this idiotic story about JFK. And Donald was dismayed that the folks in the media weren't repeating this latest idiocy, so he figured he'd have to do it himself. He'd have to go on national television and accuse my dad of that. Listen, my father has been my hero my whole life. My dad was imprisoned and tortured.
I forgot how wacky the Republican primary was in 2016.
He had $100 in his underwear. He washed dishes making 50 cents an hour. You know, he's exactly the kind of person Donald Trump looks down on. I'm going to do something I haven't done for the entire campaign. For those of y'all who have traveled with me all across the country, I'm going to tell you what I really think of Donald Trump.
Here we go.
This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth. And in a pattern that I think is straight out of a psychology textbook, his response is to accuse everybody else of lying.
And now you're part of that operation, Ted. If you can't beat him, join him. You kiss the fucking ring. You got subsumed in that empire of deceit, and you are his goon. You are his man. You lie for him now. He doesn't have to lie anymore because he's got lying Ted Cruz to do his dirty work for him. So there it is, Ted Cruz in 2016 saying what we all fucking know about Trump, most obviously in the world, but you can't get a Republican to fucking say this now because they're too scared. They're a bunch of cowards. Right, here's from the debate.
I feel that I am a conservative. Now, I also feel I'm a common sense conservative because some of the views I don't agree with. And I think a lot of people agree with me, obviously, based on what's happening.
Flexibility is a good thing, but you shouldn't be flexible on core principles. I like Donald. He is an amazing entertainer. But his policies for most of his life...
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
For most of his life, his policies have been very, very liberal. For most of his life, he has described himself as very pro-choice and as a supporter of partial birth abortion. Right now, today, as a candidate, he supports federal taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. I disagree with him on that. That's a matter of principle, and I'll tell you...
You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush.
Lying Ted.
You are the single biggest liar. All right. This guy lied. Let me just tell you, this guy lied about Ben Carson when he took votes away from Ben Carson in Iowa, and he just continues. And today we had robocalls saying Donald Trump is not going to run in South Carolina, where I'm leading by a lot. I'm not going to run. Vote for Ted Cruz. This is the same thing he did to Ben.
Isn't this amazing, chat? J.D. Vance called Trump a fascist. Marco Rubio...
But now they're a freaking communist.
I don't even remember what all Marco Rubio said about Donald Trump, but he went hard on Donald Trump during the primary, right? And all these guys have just essentially, like, he stole their party out from under them, and they have kissed his ring. They are part of the operation. They are part of the swamp now.
Ben Carson, this guy will say
they are part of Fraud Incorporated, aka MAGA.
anything. Nasty guy. Now I know why he doesn't have one endorsement from any of his colleagues.
All right, John, I get
Senator
to
Cruz,
respond.
pick from the buffet there.
He's a nasty guy.
Well, I will say.
I mean, and see, he's hitting him where he hurts. I mean, Ted Cruz is literally nasty. Like, he's not even speaking. Like, right, he's saying he's being nasty, right? But in reality, what Trump is doing is deftly pointing out the fact that Cruz not only does nasty things, says nasty things, he is a nasty, greasy guy. He is a disgusting worm of a man. That's true.
Say it is fairly.
And look, this is the environment that Donald Trump, like, yeah, right. These are the jokers that Donald Trump stole the party from.
Remarkable to see Donald defending Ben after he called him pathological and compared him to a child molester, both of which were offensive and wrong. But let me say more broadly, you notice
that's not a bad thing for Donald Trump. He's Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. Of course, that's not an insult.
Donald didn't disagree with the substance that he supports taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. And Donald has this weird pattern. When you point to his own record, he screams, liar, liar, liar. If you want to go.
Where did I support it? Where did I support it?
It's true.
Hey, Ted, where did I
Ted's right about this.
If you want to go and watch the video, go to our website,
Ted,
tedcruz.org.
Where
you
did I
can see
support it, Ted?
Out
Now,
of
don't tell me about
Donald's
a
own
video.
mouth. When we
Where
were
did I support it?
You supported it when we were battling over defunding Planned Parenthood. You went on
That's
television
a lot
and
of
said
nuts.
Planned Parenthood does wonderful things and we should not defund
Oh,
them.
it does do wonderful things, but not as it relates to abortion.
So tell
they
me, what
do
are the
some,
wonderful
excuse
things?
me.
What are the
They do wonderful trans health care. Yeah, is that what he's talking? What is he talking about?
There are wonderful things having to do with women's health.
You see,
but
you and I
not
disagree
when it comes
on that.
to abortion. Not
John,
when it comes
the
to
reason
abortion.
The reason principle matters, sadly, was illustrated by the first questions today. The next president is going to appoint 1, 2, 3.
Anyway, that's from the blast from the past, from the 2016 election.
Their caliphate and defeated them. And he also took out Baghdadi, the head of ISIS. I mean, those are not the actions of an isolationist, but at the same time,
I don't even know
Trump,
what isolation is. It's just a slur designed to control. I mean, I've never been an isolationist. I don't even know what that means.
Okay, Rand Paul is my colleague. Rand is an isolationist.
Okay,
and Tucker, you've become one, and I don't mean it as a slur.
Of course I've not.
You consistently say, you have said, actually, I want to read from your newsletter, because if you ask what an isolationist is, your newsletter a couple of days ago, you wrote, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, and we're hoping to get back to the negotiating table. We will see. There are several people in leadership in Iran that will not be coming back, Trump said, following the strikes.
Right.
It's worth taking a step back and wondering how any of this helps the United States. We can't think of a single way. Okay, that to me is the essence of isolationism. And let me just ask you, when the Ayatollah chants death to America, I believe him. Do you not believe him? Do you think he doesn't mean it when he says death to America?
Well, I think he hates America, for sure. And I'm opposed to
Drew, who has got a question for me. Let me answer it really quick. All right. Drew says, did he steal it from him? So Drew's talking about the Republican Party. Did Donald Trump steal the Republican Party from the Republicans? Or did they meaning the Republican base, I'm assuming, wake up? In reality, the Republicans for a long time have been working to cultivate an anti-intellectual base, because people who don't trust facts and logic are easy to manipulate. People who look down on education, like Republicans, are easy to manipulate. And the Republican Party inculcated their base with these attributes to make them easier to manipulate. What they didn't realize, though, was that they weren't the only ones who could manipulate that base. And Donald Trump came by and was able to manipulate those rubes. And I say that in the nicest way, right? Because I don't think anybody deserves to be conned and tricked and used and manipulated. Not even a fucking Republican deserves that, right? But he worked the Republican Party. He worked that anti-intellectual base better than any Republican out there, right? Let me give you an example. Let's talk about immigration. Republican Party, they used immigration for years and years and years and years. You hate these immigrants, don't you? They're taking your jobs, and the Democrats are on their side. And the point of this wasn't to do something in policy, because in reality, the Republicans, their base, their real base, their money men are capitalists who are using immigrants for cheap labor, right? So they don't want illegal immigration to go away. They don't want a pathway to citizenship, right, which would allow these people to become citizens of the country and would give them the ability to, unionize and to organize and to stand up for their rights, where they're no longer afraid they're going to be deported. Because right now what happens is, if you're on one of those sites, you work at a meat packing plant, and you say, hey, my buddy just got his hand cut off the other day. Can we have some fucking safety around here? They will call ICE on you. ICE will come down to the slaughterhouse, and you would think, are they going to arrest the owner of the company? Nope. Only the workers. Only the workers. They deport the workers, right? They call ICE on these people, and they deport them, and they replace them with a fresh new crew of immigrants hungry for a paycheck, right? Hungry for to be able to work, right? And oftentimes to send money back to their home country, right? And so this is the Republican Party use immigration as a carrot, right? And just like in Minecraft, right? You get a carrot, you get a fishing pole, you get a saddle, you put the saddle on a pig, and then you ride that pig, and you can control where the pig goes by moving the carrot in different directions. That's how the Republican Party manipulated their base using immigration. Donald Trump sees the fishing rod with the carrot on it. He snaps the carrot off, and he's like, you want this? You want this? Here you go. Mass deportations. Here you go. Kids in cages. Here you go. Build the wall. And he kind of acts like he's going to give the, Republican base what they actually wanted, what they've been being manipulated with, right? And, up until the point where, his money men start calling him and say, hey, listen, Donald, I run an agricultural operation up here in Northern California. I use undocumented labor for my business. It's the only way that my business model makes sense. Your people came up here and they took some of my best workers. Could you please cut it out? And Donald says, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right. So, you're seeing, why Donald Trump is different than the rest of the Republican Party. You're also seeing why he's the same. Right. Look at the Iran thing. Right. For years and years and years and years, Donald Trump railed against the Jeb Bushes, against the George Bushes, against the war on Iraq, and against all the bad decisions made by neoconservatives. Right.
But now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
The neoconservatives had an agenda, had a plan. It's called, look it up. It's called the Project for a New American Century, PNAC, Project for a New American Century, right? And this was the book that Bush was operating off of in the War on Terror. That book said, we hit Iraq, we hit it had the list of the countries, the so-called axis of evil, right? And it said, like, how are we gonna get the American people to sign off on a war against these countries? Maybe if there was a Pearl Harbor style incident in the United States. And of course, that Pearl Harbor style incident happened in 9/11, which they graciously took advantage of in order to, take out, take over Afghanistan, take over Iraq, rattle the saber around Iran, but never quite, because of Iraq being such a disaster, they were never able to get their war with Iran. Well, now Donald looks to be on the precipice of getting them that war with Iran, right? So you're seeing, as different as he was from the neocons that he took the party over from, they're the perverse incentives that make the neocons what they are still there. And you're seeing Donald Trump, bowing down to some of those incentives, right? In some ways, Trump has changed the Republican Party. In some ways, the Republican Party has changed Donald Trump. But good question.
And do you think he's willing to act on it? It's not just hate America. He also is leading a country and trying to develop a nuclear weapon.
Under certain circumstances, for sure. So the question is, do you act in a way that makes that more or less likely? And that's a tough call. It's something that you can debate. One of the ways you shut down debate is by calling people names like isolationists, pretending they're like pro-Nazi or something, or as you did, claiming I'm an anti-Semite.
Right,
that's not a way to get to a solution or have a rational conversation. That's a way to make people be quiet. And I'm against that. And
Okay, so if you don't like the label
questions.
isolationist, how would you... Look, Rand, and I served with Rand. Rand is a friend of mine, but Rand opposes every military action in every circumstance.
Of course I don't oppose every military. This whole thing is infantile, and you know that it is. It's a way to call people names.
So which of Trump's
and
military
make them
actions
be,
do you support,
and
or do
make
you disagree with them all?
And make them be
Give
quiet.
me another name. If you don't like that, I'm not trying to have you be quiet. We've been talking an hour and a half. I'm asking, if you don't like the name isolationist, how would you describe it?
I would describe myself in the same way you falsely described yourself in this conversation.
Falsely.
Yes,
so
falsely.
What did I say false?
You said that the only thing that matters in a foreign policy decision is whether it helps the United States.
I didn't say the only, I said the predominant.
That's what I understood.
Okay, so chat, I hate to have to do this, but I gotta take a break for a second to suggest to farm some likes from you. Let's be honest, we're farming some likes here. Those likes help me out a lot. If you like what you're seeing, if you like what you're getting here, let the algorithm know by hitting that like button, right? That really helps me out a lot, right? Another thing that that helps me out that you can do if you're watching on Twitch is if you have Prime, you can use your Prime to if you attach your Prime, if you connect your Prime to your Twitch account, you can use your Twitch Prime to get a free sub. If you sub to my channel, you'll get all my emotes, right? And it'll cost you nothing, right? Those are two things that you can do for me for free. If you want to do more than for free, we do have this dono goal right now that's at 29 out of 100. If it gets to 100 by the end of the stream, and we are coming up on the end of the stream, that's why I'm stopping and letting you know. If we get that to 100, I'll stick around and cover another subject. Right now, it looks like what is winning is Ethan Klein roasted by North Star Radio, right? So we also have Trump. The passport update on some stuff that has happened in the courts. We have Ezra Klein's DashCon disaster and Adam Friedland on Stativies World. So if any of those things sound good to you, time is ticking away, right? We're, when I, like I said, I don't have a lot of time today. So when we get done with this, it's going to be like the end of the stream, unless we hit that bonus goal and get some bonus content. So that's what's going on. Of course, what makes that number go up is if you do a super chat, a super sticker, if you get yourself a membership, if you gift a membership, if you support me on Throne. Right now, I'm trying to fund my education. I'm trying to learn Thai language at Thai Language School. So you can help me out with my Thai visa fund if you want to on a Throne, if you sign up for my Patreon accounts, or if you support me over on Twitch. Any of those things count. Any of those things raise that number, and they give you the ability to put your money where your mouth is. You can let me know when you donate which of these topics you want to see as bonus content, and I will add your donation as a percentage to the topic of your choice. Anyway, break done. Let's continue.
Okay. So let me revise what you said and apply it to myself and say the only thing that matters is whether or not it serves the United States. And I feel very stung by what happened in Iraq. Possibly because, unlike you, I guess, I supported it. And I saw us get drawn into it in a way that nobody anticipated. And I saw the cost, just $3 trillion.
Legacy of Boom, you just got weaseled.
Levels to the United States was just so profound. And
it was clearly a mistake.
Gosh, it reminds me of Kaiser Wilhelm in 1914 saying, my men will be back by the time the leaves turn. And of course, that destroyed Christian Europe. So it's like you don't really know where these things are going once the shooting starts. That's my only point. And calling people names, anti-Semite, isolationist, to get them to stop talking is not the way to serve your country. That's all I'm saying.
So look, I'm trying to have a real and serious conversation.
Right.
And look, a lot of this has been contentious. I wish it had not, because as we started out by saying, you and I agree vehemently on 80% of the issues. This discussion is focused on the 20% where we don't. I will say, look, on Iraq, you look at the 2016 presidential campaign where you had 17 Republicans running. If you set Rand aside, and his views are on one side, there were only two candidates on that stage that opposed the Iraq war. Me and Donald Trump were the only two. Everyone else thought the Iraq war was a great thing. I think it was a disaster.
And just a reminder, Donald Trump did not oppose the Iraq war when it was happening, when it was important, when he could have had an effect on whether the Iraq war happened or whether we pulled out. Donald Trump was in favor of the Iraq war.
Disaster. So you and I agree on that as well. In my view, I think your foreign policy has gone too far. So, I mean, let me ask you, is there a military action Trump has undertaken that you agree with? Because I've not heard anything.
A military, look, I would say it's really simple. I believe in self-defense. That's why I keep firearms at home. I think it's morally justified to defend yourself, your family, your property, your nation. And so to the extent that you can deter a threat through violence always being the least appealing choice, violence always being, if I can finish, always being a tragedy, I think you can justify the use of violence in self-defense. That is my personal view, and that applies to me and to the country that I live in. Those are my views. That's not an isolationist view. It's not an anti-Israel view. It's not an anti-Semitic view, with apologies. It is, I think, a pretty common sense view. But my problem is that lawmakers in Washington are light on detail with these things, and they speak, as you do, entirely in moral terms. These people are bad. These people are...
I'm not speaking entirely in moral terms. I'm not interested in killing bad guys. I'm interested in killing people who are trying to kill us.
If we had...
That's different. I'm not engaged in morality.
Are you now? Because you told me that the government of Iran is presently trying to assassinate Donald Trump, and then you said...
that is undisputed. There's literally nobody who disputes that fact.
Then why don't you support military action right now against Iran?
We are engaged in military action right now.
Why don't you support offensive military action?
We're bombing the crap out of them. Israel is, and we're supporting them. Israel is.
Okay. So why shouldn't the U.S. military defend its own president? I don't understand that.
Look, and it goes back to...
Because you don't really believe it's true. That's why.
Nobody disputes it, Tucker. Did we land on the moon? What other conspiracies do you not...
No, Ted, you can't do this shit. Look, is Tucker Carlson at time to time, does he have a predilection for conspiracy theories? Absolutely. But for you to call... You're the one advancing conspiracy theories. You've said that Iran is intent on assassinating Donald Trump. You have shown us zero proof, and yet you're acting like everybody believes this. Everybody knows this. If you say that it's not true, that's like saying that we didn't land on the moon. No, Ted, you're the one spouting conspiracy theories here, not Tucker this time.
Was 9/11 an inside job? I mean, like what?
So I've asked you the names of these people. I've asked you how you know the information.
And again, chat, my take on 9/11. 9/11 was extreme negligence from the Bush-Cheney administration that should have rightly resulted in the impeachment, not in the passage of the Patriot Act, that hideous piece of legislation that created ICE. The shit that we're dealing with right now is a result of the rally around the flagpole effect that happened after 9/11. Instead of being blamed for its incompetence in letting a faux strike the United States that it knew in a memo, chat, there's a memo to George W. Bush, bin Laden bound and determined to strike in the U.S., right? Bush knew this would happen. That Bush knew that bin Laden had his eyes on that, right? It was negligence. All right. Now, whether it's more than negligence, right? People people have theories about due to the, like I mentioned before, the PNAC document, the People for a New American Century had an agenda to strike Iraq, Iran, and a bunch of different countries. And they said, oh, geez, the only way we'll get to do that is if we have a Pearl Harbor-like event in the United States. They got one in 9/11. A lot of people jumped to the conclusion because of that somehow Dick Cheney or George Bush engineered that, or some people will blame Israel, right? But from all the evidence that we actually have, it's a case of extreme negligence. But it shouldn't have resulted in George W. Bush's, approval rating going up, the media glazing up, his every, inept action in prosecuting this ridiculous war on terror. It should have ended in his administration being ended, which, really started on some pretty faulty ground to begin with, given the fact that a lot of the postmortem on the 2000 election indicates that it was actually Al Gore who won the election, not him. The Supreme Court and the Brooks Brother riot kind of handed him that election, right? So yeah, Bush shouldn't have been in there to begin with. Definitely his failure to protect the country during 9/11 should have resulted in his removal from office, but instead he was granted another term and he was given all the shitty legislation he wanted to. That's why we're still struggling with this bullshit with ICE and surveillance to this day.
And I know it because the U.S. military and the intelligence agencies have testified before Congress repeatedly
And what did they say?
that Iran is trying to murder Donald Trump and has hired hitmen. Do I know the name of the hitmen? No, I'm sorry. And I don't think we do either, because we would apprehend them if we knew their names.
Then why don't you take it seriously enough to support killing the Ayatollah in response to protect our president? But you don't. This doesn't even make any sense.
It's weird. A lot of what Tucker is saying, like, I mean, I get the feeling that he's against foreign intervention in Iran, as part of his isolationism, as part of his America First, because he'd rather see Trump take it to American cities, invade America's cities, like, right? That's what America First means. It means we turn the U.S. military hegemon in on the United States itself, and we attack the enemy within, right? Which is anybody who doesn't like Donald Trump is the enemy within. That's what America First is actually about, right? That's what that means, is attack America. America attacks America first. We have the boomerang effect of empire going on here, right?
And you're calling me an isolationist. If I believed that was true, I would support military action against the government of Iran.
Okay, that's interesting, because there is literally...
You can't kill our president.
All right, out of 535 members of Congress, I am not aware of one who disputes that Iran is trying to murder Donald J. Trump. That's not even the looniest Democrat doesn't dispute that. So I don't... You're saying if you believed what is, I think, a fact that they are trying to...
You think it's a fact?
Yes.
What is the fact exactly?
That they've hired hitmen.
In the United States?
Yes.
Americans?
Yeah, he's not in Iran, so they haven't hired hitmen.
No, but
in
are
Iran.
they the hitmen American?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you what, and by the way, I'm not the CIA. I'm not the Department of Defense. I'm telling you what they have told us.
I'm not disputing it. I'm merely saying
we are.
That I'm not. I'm saying the logic train has a massive hole in it. If you believe that's true, then you should, by definition, support killing the people trying to kill our president. But you don't support that.
Now, Tucker,
so I'm wondering what's going on here.
So,
Tucker, you took offense to the word isolationist. And I genuinely don't mean it as...
Do you all remember Taco Trump? This is something that investors said about Trump when he tried to institute tariffs, and then the bond market punished him, so he backed off, and then he put him back on, and then he takes him off, right? So they came up with this thing, and it's copium. It's called Trump always caves in. Wait, no, sorry, that would be Taki. Trump always chickens out. Yeah, that's what taco means, right? And look, if you want Trump to not enact the tariffs, you probably should not tease him about chickening out. That's almost like you're daring him to stick to the tariffs, which would be disastrous for the economy, right? Tucker Carlson is telling Ted Cruz, well, if you believe all this shit, then we should go to a war with Iran. We should assassinate the Ayatollah, except, right, all this stuff, right, that based on if you really believe this stuff, then you would be at war with Iran already. I wouldn't be saying that if I was Tucker in a time which there's a huge drive to get the United States involved in a war with Iran, right? I get what he's doing. He's pointing out the absurdity of Ted Cruz's lies here, but he's doing it in a way that is like right. Trump is that petty, right? I know most politicians wouldn't be. You couldn't just be like, oh, he's chickening out and get him to do something, but Trump absolutely will. He's a fucking ego beast.
Is a pejorative. I disagree with it, But if you don't like that term, I don't know how else to describe what is a coherent foreign policy that says we're surrounded by two giant nations. By the way, isolationism has long been a school of foreign policy.
I believe in self-defense. I'm not but not into the slurs, the anti-Semite stuff. I just don't like that. I'm telling you what I believe.
But is there a single military action Trump took that you agree with?
Yeah, you're definitely not into the anti-Semite stuff, considering that you brought a Holocaust denier on your fucking program. Yeah.
So did you agree with taking out General Soleimani?
Oh, I don't know. It turned out better than I thought, I guess.
I mean, you said at the time it would lead us to World War III.
I was worried about it. I've seen that.
Well, but that proved not the case.
I was wrong, as I have been many times.
Did you agree with taking out the ISIS caliphate?
Through the grace of Iran, you're literally relying on the grace of the Ayatollah there, right? You're relying on the grace of the supreme leader of Iran in order for that not to turn into something worse. Yeah.
But well, if we took the ISIS caliphate, why are they running Syria right now? And you're for that. Why is that?
What do you mean? I didn't say I'm for that.
You don't seem to have a problem with it.
I didn't say
ISIS is now running Syria. You're like, we'll see.
No, I did.
Look, I mean, I know why.
But by the way, I didn't push Assad out. Assad toppled.
It's hilarious.
Oh my God, Tucker's cackling is the best.
Assad is bad, but no, ISIS runs Syria, but that's fine. We'll just
He's going to turn red.
You can see on ISIS, not a big deal.
You know,
not a big deal to try to kill Trump.
Hold on a second. I want to get back. You know why I don't care, and why, and you do your trademark smirky laugh. I know why you don't care.
What are you even talking about?
Why don't I care?
I think he means snarky laugh, but whatever.
I don't know why. You tell me. Because you think it's okay because they're not making angry noises or something, but by your own standards, they're ISIS.
They may be ISIS, but there are ISIS. That's why he's okay with it, right? They're in control. They're in league with the United States and Israel, instead of being in league with Russia like Assad was.
So immoral that they must die, but now they're running Syria, and you don't think that we should take military action against the government of Syria because why? They're ISIS.
What I said is I don't know how.
That was the justification, by the way, chat, after October 7th for why Israel should prosecute a war in which the goal is to eliminate, fully kill Hamas, right? Was that these guys are like ISIS, right? ISIS who famously, cut off heads on television, right? Somehow Hamas is like that. Well, they did have the lie about the 40 beheaded babies, so I guess that's what they were resting it on, right? But they do that to say, all right, so killing off ISIS is okay, that's acceptable, right? And Hamas equals ISIS, therefore it's okay if we prosecute a forever war in Gaza to take care of Hamas. And what we're really doing is mowing the grass, reducing the Palestinian population by killing off civilians and making the area uninhabitable, right?
Good or bad it'll be. Look, I wasn't pushing Assad out. He fell. He fell on his own, in part because he was heavily supported by Hezbollah. And when Israel took out the Hezbollah leadership, he lost his base of support.
But the current ISIS leadership, you don't think is bad? You can't say it's terrible that ISIS runs a country?
I am concerned about it.
Concerned? Aren't you horrified?
I want to see what they do.
Oh, so you got a wait and see attitude on ISIS?
What the fuck?
ISIS now?
On the government of Syria, they are.
You can see what a terrorist really is, right? You can see by the fact that the United States called this entity a terrorist organization at one point, and now the United States calls these people allies. They call them responsible leadership for Syria, right? It is literally just a word that we throw around at our enemies. That's what terrorist fucking means.
Or not actively that I am aware of.
Because if the definition of terrorism had to do with killing civilians, then we would admit that the Israel Defense Force, in reality, more of an offensive force, more of an occupational force, we would admit that the IDF is a terrorist organization.
Trying to murder Americans. And that's a real dividing line. Are you trying to murder Americans or not?
I'm just saying it's a little weird that we waged this war against ISIS and now they're running a country in the Mediterranean. I think that people would be very, very upset about that, but you don't seem very upset about that.
Did you agree with Trump taking out al-Baghdadi, the head of ISIS?
I'm totally opposed to ISIS, and what I care about is results, actually, and if taking out the head of ISIS ends ISIS, I guess I'm for it, but now ISIS runs Syria.
Let's see. what does chat say? Drew Who says tariffs won't be terrible for the economy. Yeah, so it already is. It's already raised prices. Drew Who, one of the reasons that the Biden was running so badly behind Trump, one of the reasons that his vice president Kamala Harris was defeated last year was because prices are too high. The country has become unaffordable. And although she made some noises early on about doing something about price gouging, she ultimately shut the fuck up when the business interests told her to not say that she would do something about price gouging, because that price gouging is translating to profits for them, right? So into that environment, we add a ridiculous, antiquated policy that does not belong in this world, that does not belong in this century, in the hopes that that cutting off the United States from the products that people need to buy will result in the spontaneous generation of industries that do not exist in the United States. Some industries which cannot exist in the United States, right? And for instance, there are agricultural products hit by tariffs that cannot be grown in the United States. All that does is raise the prices, right? If you want to use tariffs to grow an industry, you have to do them in a targeted way, not the way that Trump did it with this universal like baseline tariff and then retaliatory tariffs that make no sense on top of that, where we're tariffing an island that there's no humans on, just penguins, right? Yeah, it's literally a policy written by ChatGPT. I fucking kid you not, right? The equation that they used to figure out the retaliatory tariffs was something that like ChatGPT would come up with, because that's what you're dealing with this lazy, incompetent, pathetic, this pathetic Trump regime, right? But yeah, they're raising your prices already. Your prices have already gone up because of A, the speculation on what the Trump tariffs will do, and B, now they're real to some degree, and now they're having an effect on the prices, and that effect's not good. If you thought that America was unaffordable under Biden and Kamala, it is necessarily more unaffordable now. Whatever Americans wanted
up here, but now there are
in choosing another 4 years of Trump, right? Whatever America's wanted out of that, they are decidedly not getting. And that is why Trump is so far underwater. He's in the 30s, chat, as far as approval goes, right? His immigration policy is now unpopular, despite that being one of the more popular issues that he ran on, because it's been revealed that he's not going after like bloody murderers and shit like that, which didn't really exist. And if they did, they were being arrested and punished and deported under Biden, right? That didn't really exist. So instead, they're going to Home Depot and deporting day laborers. They're deporting people's uncles, aunts, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, cousins, grandmas, grandpas. They are cutting people out of their community with these things and disappearing them in the night without due process, right? Americans have decided that just like they didn't like kids in cages, they don't like the bullshit that Donald Trump is doing in the name of keeping our borders safe, or whatever the fuck kind of canard he's selling. So yeah, no, it's already hurting you. It's not going to help you. It's not going to grow any industries because Donald Trump is using tariffs wrong. You could use tariffs. Let's say like solar. China's kicking our ass when it comes to solar panels. Okay, you want to you want to help the burgeoning solar panel energy industry in the United States, right? Putting tariffs on that one thing might make sense, especially if you've already got that industry kind of going in the United States. Putting tariffs on industries that have long since left the United States, that have no infrastructure to be able to do their business, jobs that American people will turn their nose up at and not take, does not help us. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. There is only economic self-harm, because Donald Trump is an idiot, and he has hired an idiot in Peter Navarro to run his tariffs regime. I hope that helps.
So I'm wondering, how does this work?
I mean, my point is...
At the time, I mean, I've taken so many different positions over the years, some of which have been wrong. I really do my best to be honest and correct if they are and admit that I was wrong. I'm not one of these people who's like, I've always been consistent. No, my views change all the time because the facts change all the time. You're not going to get consistency from me. You're only going to get sincerity.
Well, I will say this, and look, I believe you're sincere.
Yeah.
But...
I'm not God. I'm just some guy watching, trying to figure out the right thing for America.
And I think because you believe you were mistaken, and I agree previously, I think you've overcorrected.
What do you mean overcorrected? I'm worried about turning this mess in Iran into a much larger mess. That's the concern.
And by the way, that's a reasonable worry.
Look, I know it's reasonable. And I know you've been like, you're like ready to call me all these names for asking, you're just asking questions. Yes, I am. So here's my question to you. If the Ayatollah is killed in Iran, and he very well
could if there's a war.
I have just read in the paper this morning that Israel tried to take him out twice, and Trump told them not to.
I have read that. I don't have independent confirmation one way or the other.
Do you think that they should take?
So no independent confirmation on that I think has been out in the news, right? But he somehow thinks that there is confirmation that that Iran has tried to assassinate Trump, right? Even though like we haven't seen that, like, and he's unwilling to offer any proof of it.
Take him out.
So I actually talked about it. As you know, I do a podcast every week, Verdict with Ted Cruz, and I actually talked about it in the latest podcast. And I said, look, I've seen the reporting that says that Trump asked them not to take out the Ayatollah. And what I said in the podcast is, I think it's reasonable for them to decide not to try to take him out. What they've done is targeted just about the entire top level of the military, the people that actually conduct the war. I can see an argument that taking out both the head of state and a religious leader could make him a martyr and could cause more problems than it's worth. And by the way,
how about the argument that, look, Iranians hate the government, all right? That seems legit. From everything that I've read, from everything that I've looked at, the government in Iran is not popular, okay? When governments are not popular, they sometimes seek out, as Donald Trump does, an external or internal enemy to focus the anger of the people on. That's a way that unpopular governments stay in power. Why are we giving that to the unpopular Iranian government? Why are we giving them somebody that they hate more in the United States and Israel, right? You're actually reinforcing the grip that the current Iranian government has on power by opposing them, by attacking them, right? You're setting them up to say that this country needs to be defended and you need me to defend it, right? And at the same time, any group that might vie for power, that might be able to displace the current government, if it gets the approval of the United States, if it gets the approval of Israel, is immediately viewed, rightly so, by the people of Iran as a collaborator. You are working with the enemy. We do not like you. So by doing this shit, by doing this Israel shit, right, you are helping your enemy stay in power, and you are hurting any group that might have a chance of displacing them. This is not an effective strategy.
If you take out the Ayatollah, I don't know if the next guy isn't just as bad, and so,
or worse, because there are hardliners, that feel like that the Iranian government is not bellicose, it's not fighting back enough.
What happens to the country?
I don't know, but you mentioned before, and I want to go back to this. You said something like, you, like most other politicians, are engaged in moral terms. And let me be clear, I am talking about national interest. I am talking about protecting America. So there are bad guys on planet Earth that I don't think we should take out, even though they're bad guys.
Good.
I'll call them bad guys, but I'm not willing to use U.S. military force to take them out. In this instance, what Israel is doing is taking out their capacity to build nuclear weapons. Why? Because they judge the risk is too high if they got nuclear weapons.
I understand that. I understand that. I think it's in progress. I think it'll probably be achieved, probably with U.S. military support. Who knows? But the president said he's for that.
And by the way, where the military support is most needed is Fordow, which is it's a bunker that's built under a mountain.
Right.
And Israel's taken out most of the rest, like Natanz, which is their big enrichment site.
Okay, so we're getting to the brass tacks here. Fordow is indeed what a compound that Israel cannot take out by itself. And the United States does have bunker buster bombs, aka Moab, the mother of all bombs. They have the kind of munitions that might be able to reach into the deep recesses of the underground that the Fordo compound is built into. Okay, but you're not going to be able to see that unless you join us in the horizontal stream, because I'm about to end the vertical stream. It's been nice talking to everybody. It's been nice having you. We're going to end the vertical stream right now, but the stream will continue on horizontal. If you want to join us, this is the link. All right, this is the link. I am going to pin the link. There we go. It's pinned, and you will possibly be rated into the stream as well if all goes according to plan. Let me just make sure that that's all ready to go in terms of, yeah, we are gonna raid into the other stream. So stick with us if you want to hear what's going on with the whole question of the United States getting itself involved in Israel's conflict with Iran, as well as Ted Cruz being exposed for knowing nothing about the country that he wants to go to war with. So yeah, go ahead and click that link, join us if you want to, and I will see you on the flip side. All right. So yeah, we're only ending the short stream. Everybody else just sit tight, okay? Sit tight.